The cold wind was raging, and the spider webs between the ruins were swaying in the wind. Rubble was scattered everywhere, and the air was filled with a damp, moldy smell and a pungent, unpleasant odor. Snakes and rats occasionally roam around in this dark and damp corner, but when Geo has become numb to it. Looking back half a month ago, she was still a modern cultivator. Although he lived in the deep mountains and forests to practice with his master, at least he had enough food and drink and had clothes and shelter. But she never expected that after waking up from a sleep, she would become a 12-year-old orphan living in the interstellar age and making a living by picking up garbage. Moreover, all the cultivation methods she had learned were of no use here. God knows how she felt when she woke up and found herself in a dirty and messy environment. The cultivator Wenjio became an orphan Wenjio, and at the same time inherited the memories of the original owner. The original owner's childhood memories were very vague, with only some fragments from the past 2 years. The other party is like a rat that grows up in this environment. It goes to the garbage dump every day to find some food, and also tries to snatch some scrap copper and iron from adults to sell for money. In short, it tries every possible way to survive. It's a pity that despite the original owner's efforts, he couldn't overcome the sudden illness. Well, a cotton rope always breaks at the thinnest part, and misfortune always finds the unfortunate people. Wenjiao has always been very receptive. After all, she had witnessed her senior sister flying into the sky by pushing off with her left foot and her right foot. So she quickly accepted the reality of time travel and chose to inherit the original owner's career and continue picking up trash. There's no way. She is too young now. There is no job to do, so I have to find a way to survive. Therefore, she spent the past half-month like this, but accumulating day by day, she has gained experience in picking up garbage. In a small garbage dump like that, although the probability of picking up nutrient solution and discarded food is the highest, the wandering adults around are watching you closely and you may be robbed at any time. Even though there were many adults picking up scrap metal to sell at this large garbage dump, the area was so large that a child like her could still pick up some by being flexible. However, it was impossible to snatch good things from adults. Even if you picked them up, they would be snatched away, and you might even get beaten. When Wenjio couldn't even afford medicine, he would most likely die if he got beaten. So when Gio came to this large garbage dump not to risk her life to steal valuables, she mainly came to pick up some food to eat. After all, people need to fill their stomachs to survive. Until a strong light shot down from the dark night sky, and the hovercraft full of garbage stopped in midair, making a roar. When Gio immediately pulled the big bag beside him, found a good position and waited for the opportunity. Boom, 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 boom. The garbage on the hovercraft had been dumped. As the light disappeared and the car drove away, when Jiu rushed into the garbage dump like an arrow. There were many people around like her, rushing towards the garbage dump frantically. When Gio endured the disgusting and pungent smell and tried hard to search through the garbage dump, while at the same time trying to avoid being discovered by those adults who were as fierce as jackals and tigers. In such an environment, robbery is common. The place she was in was one she had been to many times before. Because it was some distance away from the center of the garbage mountain, few people would come here to search first. Usually, people would come here after searching other places. When Gio was rummaging through the garbage pile with her dirty hands, but she was actually so hungry that her legs were shaking and her head was dizzy, and she was just holding on her last breath. She didn't know if she was really lucky today. She actually found a few boxes of unopened meat slices. When Gio quickly checked the expiration date on it, and it was exactly the day after tomorrow. Since she had found it today, she could still eat it for 2 days. So she immediately stuffed the boxes of meat slices into her pocket and then continued to look through the garbage. Before she had time to search, she suddenly heard hurried footsteps coming from the left. When Gio cautiously pulled up her bag and found a nearby oil can to hide in, she had just hidden inside for a while when she heard the voices of 2 men cursing outside. "Didn't you say there was a kid here every day? Where is he? I saw him a few days ago. Why is he not here today? What the heck are you yelling about? Why would I come here with you to steal the air? You can't even see a person clearly. You piece of shoot. Why are you so anxious? Look again. She might have moved to another place." Hearing the sound, when Gio shrank into the oil tank and did not move. He slowed down his breathing and tried hard to hide his movements. The world is indeed a dangerous place. Even someone as poor as her who can't even afford a single star coin is still being robbed. TSK, I'm afraid he froze to death somewhere. If you want to find someone, go find them yourself. I'm going to look for others. Go away. I'll find it myself. After that, the other person's footsteps gradually faded away. But the person who stayed behind was still circling around, occasionally making rough rummaging noises. Wenju pricked up her ears and waited patiently. She was too young now, and it would be too difficult for her to confront an adult, so she naturally hoped to avoid it if possible. However, things did not develop in the direction she expected. The man kept searching for a long time and still did not give up. The unbearable shouting and cursing never stopped. When Gio cursed inwardly, this person wasted her time collecting trash if he didn't leave. She was huddled in the oil tank, and the biting cold almost froze her to death. After a while, the shouting and searching sounds finally disappeared. When Gio waited for a while, and only after confirming that the people outside had indeed left did he carefully open the lid of the barrel. But just as she opened the lid of the barrel, a pair of rough, big hands suddenly reached in, grabbed her hair that was like dry grass, and lifted her up like pulling a carrot. Darn it, the little jerk is hiding here. The pain of her hair pulling at her scalp almost drove Wenju crazy. She struggled in the air, but the adult man who lifted her up was as easy as lifting a rabbit, and she couldn't break free at all. The burly man with several scars on his face looked at her for a moment, then smiled and said, "She's a woman, so it looks like she can be sold for a lot of money." However, Wenju had not given up struggling. He tried to grab upwards with his hands with long, sharp nails, which pricked Chun-Gang's hands and caused them to hurt. "Duck you!" Chun-Gang threw Wenju to the ground. When he looked at his hands, which were covered with red marks, he was so angry that he wanted to punch Wenju on the ground. But Wenju did not give him this chance. Although she was thrown to the ground and was in great pain, escaping was the most important thing. Before the fist fell, Wenju gritted her teeth, turned over, and then immediately got up and ran away. But before she ran far, a rope flew from behind and tied her left calf, tripping her to the ground. Wenju was dragged quickly on the ground like a captured prey. TSK, let's see where you can run to." Chun-Gang's rough and rampant voice was getting closer and closer to Wenju. When he was dragged back to the original place in such a garbage-filled place, Wenju's body was already covered with small scars from being cut by the debris. Finally getting the goods he was looking for, Chun-Gang looked at Wenju, who had fainted in front of him, with satisfaction, thinking that he could get some star coins to spend after selling this little girl. But he didn't notice the little girl's left hand buried behind her back. Chun-Gang squatted down while humming a discordant tune and slowly approached Wenju, wanting to tie her up more tightly with a rope before taking her away. But in an instant, Wenju, who was lying on the ground, suddenly opened his bright and clear eyes, like a ferocious beast that had been dormant for a long time. A second later, Chun-Gang fell to the ground, twitching while holding his bleeding neck, his wide-open eyes filled with surprise and fear. The little girl who stood up again was holding a sharp piece of iron in her left hand, and scarlet blood was dripping on the black iron piece. Chun-Gang bled like a fountain, and he twitched for less than a minute. His cloudy pupils then dilated, and his hands, which he had tried to hold tightly, fell to the side. It was not advisable to stay here for long. Wenju calmly searched the man's body quickly and found some things that looked like they could be sold. Then she quickly walked back to the oil tank, picked up the big bag and left. Braving the cold wind, Wenju walked barefoot on the dirty mud until she saw the abandoned floating bus where she was hiding. She stopped to catch her breath, then carefully searched the surroundings before getting into the bus. After Wenju dragged his tired body in, he covered the door with a wooden board standing nearby. The interior of the car was already covered with rust, and only an empty space remained after the seats were removed. The originally uncovered car windows were nailed with wooden boards and iron sheets picked up by Wenju. Because it had been abandoned for too long, a lot of wet moss had grown in the corners. However, in such an environment, it is not easy to have a place to rest. Wenju threw the bag aside. She was so tired that she fell on the bed made of tattered cloth, Although it was not soft, it was more comfortable than lying on the hard floor. After resting for a while, when Gio sat up and looked at herself, her body was covered with mud and stains. Her worn clothes were stained with blood, and her limbs were covered with blood stains. Fortunately, the wounds are not deep and there is no danger to life. I just don't know if there will be scars left in the future. When Gio took out a handful of herbs from the bag beside him, crushed them, and gently applied them to the wound. When will this day end? After treating the wound, when Gio lay on the ground and talked to herself again, shaking her feet, the cold touch made her look down, and then she remembered that her shoes had been knocked off during the dragging process. She had been digging through the garbage for more than 10 days before she found a pair of shoes that had no holes and fit her feet. Before she could enjoy the shoes for a few days, she was back to being barefoot. The already poor life was made even worse. Thinking that he had no shoes to wear again, when Gio sighed deeply, "Life is not easy, and I sigh for a long time. Forget it. At worst I can just pick up another pair." When Gio calmed down after a moment and recovered his mood, she stood up and walked to the big bag and began to carefully clean up her harvest for the day. Although her garbage collection was interrupted today, her harvest was still good. First, there were 5 boxes of meat slices. When you checked them again, the packaging was intact, and the label showed that it was Gulu beast meat, and the expiration date was exactly the day after tomorrow. She held up the boxes of meat slices to her nose one by one and sniffed them. After confirming that there was no unpleasant odor of decay, she put the 5 boxes of Gulu beast meat slices into the wooden box she used to store food. Then when Gio sorted some small parts into different categories, and finally began to check the belongings of the human trafficker who attempted to sell her. In the interstellar era, all the money is stored in the star network. To access the star network, one must first own and bind a wisdom ring. But one Gio couldn't even afford a wisdom ring, let alone the star network. But she knew that many wisdom rings had positioning functions, so in order to prevent someone from finding her, she did not take the man's wisdom ring away. The man didn't have much stuff on him. Apart from the rope that flew over to tie her up and looked quite valuable, the rest of his belongings could be sold for about 100 star coins. These star coins may not seem like much, but for one Gio now, it is already a considerable sum of money. You should know that a bottle of the lowest level nutrient solution costs 5 star coins, and a bottle of nutrient solution can give you the feeling of fullness of a whole meal. When Gio calculated in her mind and decided that if she bought 20 bottles of nutrient solution, she would be able to hold out for more than 10 days. It seemed that her future days would be relatively easy. When Gio put the pile of items back into his pocket, planning to sell them at a scrap store when daybreak. It was only 4:30 in the morning, and she wasn't very hungry after drinking a few drops of nutrient solution. So when Gio shrank back into the pile of cloth, closed his eyes and began to fall asleep. As time slowly passed, the only sound left in the car was her gently rising and falling breathing. Not long after, the dazzling sunlight shone in through the gap. When Gio seemed to feel the warmth and slowly opened his eyes and rubbed them. Alas, when will this day end? She really wanted to wake up from a sleep and return to her former good life. But when Gio only thought about it for a while before he woke up from his fantasy, it was better to give up the fantasy and face the reality. When Gio dug out a pair of torn cloth shoes from the wooden clothing box in the corner. Although her thumbs stuck out from a huge hole, the shoes at least fit her feet. Then she dug out a set of clean old clothes and put them on. After all, if she walked out covered in blood, the scrap collector would probably close the shop on the spot. After cleaning himself thoroughly, when Gio took out a box of Gulu beast meat slices from the wooden box, she had finished her nutrient solution and could only eat some meat slices. The environment was too simple to do any complicated processing. This was the first time that when Gio had found intact and unexpired food since he came here. Although fruits and vegetables were much more expensive than meat in the interstellar age, the price of meat was not much cheaper either. Poor people like her can only survive on nutrient solution. When Gio first found a few seasonings he had collected before, then washed the meat slices with clean water and put them into a bowl. This sweet and sour pork is a bit like the pork belly of ancient Earth, with red and white, fat and lean. But it's a pity that there is no wine to remove the fishy smell. Fortunately, when Gio had found a plant similar to ginger before, He cut a few slices with a sharp iron sheet and threw them into the bowl, then added some salt and pepper and mixed them well. Then she found some sharp iron rods to bang around with and threw a few flammable materials outside the car to use as a makeshift fire. After lighting the brilliant flame, Wenjio threaded the meat slices onto the iron rod and began to roast them. The sweet and sour pork slices are evenly fat and lean. The fat makes a sizzling sound when roasted over the fire. The oil seeps out of the meat and drips into the fire, creating small sparks. Not long after, as the aroma of the meat became stronger, the skewers of meat in Wenjio's hand were finally cooked. Sprinkle with Zeppelin, and then she takes a bite to taste it. The sweet and sour meat, which is fat and lean, has a rich aroma. The taste of cumin is perfectly integrated into it without being abrupt at all, and it also melts the greasy taste of fat. The more you chew the sweet and sour meat in your mouth, the more fragrant it becomes, and it is not greasy at all. Great! Wenjio sighed with satisfaction. After so many days, she finally had a bite of meat. After finishing the delicious barbecue, Wenjio put away the utensils. After cleaning herself up, she took the bag and went out. The garbage area where she lived was several hours' walk away from the nearest urban area, but Wenjio had been there several times before and didn't feel tired at all. She just regarded it as exercise. It was almost noon when Wenjio finally saw the edge of the city. She walked into a scrap yard on the outskirts of the city with ease and called out in a sweet voice, "Grandma Zhao." However, after entering the scrap yard, she did not see the familiar old woman, only a tall and thin young man who put down his goods and looked in her direction. "Grandma Zhao is out. Are you here to sell something?" Wang Nan narrowed his eyes and looked at the thin Wenjio. Hearing this, Wenjio just nodded without saying anything and slowly dragged her bag towards the storage table. She didn't wait for Wang Nan to help and threw the bag on the table neatly. TSK, the quality of these things is average. Wang Nan walked to the table and put on gloves. He fiddled with the things in the bag for a few times and smacked his lips and said, "At most 80 star coins." While Wang Nan was checking the items, Wenjio also secretly observed him. As the saying goes, appearance is determined by the heart. Even if he pretended to be kind, the truth could be seen from his face. This man has thin lips and a narrow chin, and is very profit-oriented. However, his cheekbones are not high, so he is still a person who can make friends. There was a crude iron plate on the chest of his coarse cloth clothes, with Grandma Zhao's resource recycling station engraved on it. It seemed that he was a helper hired by Grandma Zhao. 100. Since it wasn't Grandma Zhao herself, Wenjio had no intention of being polite and directly gave the estimated price in his mind. She has sold scrap here several times in the past half-month, so she has an idea of the recycling price of these things. Wang Nan didn't expect that the price quoted by the seemingly docile and ignorant child in front of him was exactly the highest recycling price for these items. But he was a businessman after all, and he was unwilling to just follow her orders, so he tried to cut as much as he could. So Wang Nan took out a few items from the bag and said in a good tone, "Little sister, the price I give you is absolutely the most fair. Look, there's quite a bit of wear on the end of this red gold screw. And this printed circuit board has too many scratches. I also gave you an extra 10 star coins because you are young. If you go to another store to sell it, they will give you a maximum of 70. But Wenjio didn't buy it and insisted on his offer expressionlessly, 100. Wang Nan's grinning face instantly froze. He sighed and said, "Well, let's do this. 90. Wenjio did not bargain with him anymore. She silently stuffed the items on the table back into her pocket, then walked towards the door dragging her pocket without looking back. This made Wang Nan stunned. He thought the kid wanted to fight with him for a few more rounds. But why did he just leave without saying a word? There aren't many people selling scrap recently, so I can't let the business go like this. Seeing Wenjio about to walk out the door, Wang Nan gritted his teeth and shouted, 95. Seeing that she still didn't look back and was even walking faster and faster, Wang Nan was completely helpless and shouted a final cry with gritted teeth. 100. Just 100. After hearing his offer, Wenjio turned around. Unlike her indifferent expression just now, she walked towards Wang Nan with a smile on her face. After Wang Nan saw her smiling face, he became even more frustrated as he was already hurt by his failed bargaining attempt. However, Wenjiu just walked up to him, stretched out his little hand, and waited for him to pay. Oh! Wang Nin clenched his back teeth, took out 100 star coins from his waist bag, and slowly handed them to Wenjiu. Thank you, brother. Wenjiu took the star coin that Wang Nan was holding tightly in his hand and put it in his pocket. In this era, paper money is rarely used. All payments are made through transfers on the Star Network. That is, poor people like them who cannot afford the Wisdom Ring and cannot use the Star Network are still using paper money for transactions. Wenjiu collected the money and emptied her pockets. Now that she had the money, she was about to leave when Wang Nan suddenly stopped her. Little sister, do you want to sell that rope? Wang Nan stared at Wenjiu with shining eyes, her gaze fixed on the bundle of ropes at her waist. Seeing his expression, Wenjiu immediately understood. It seemed that the price of the rope was probably not low, otherwise this stingy guy would not be so eager to ask. So Wenjiu took off the rope and held it in his hand. After thinking for a moment, he smiled sweetly and said, "Sell it. I picked it up too." Hearing Wenjiu say that he picked it up, Wang Nan immediately made up his mind and said, "This rope of yours should be a replica, not worth much." "Is that so, big brother?" Wenjiu pouted and scratched his hair like an innocent child. "How much can it sell for?" Wang Nan suppressed his excitement and took 2 steps pretending to be nonchalant. "It's only about 400 star coins." In order to prevent Wenjiu from getting suspicious, he added a few more sentences. "Brother is thinking that the cold season is coming soon, and you look so young and pitiful. I want you to buy more things to keep warm, so I offer this price. We don't usually collect counterfeit products like this." After saying this, he secretly glanced at Wenjiu, who was thinking with his head down, and waited patiently. He offered 400 star coins. I wonder how long this kid will have to pick up trash to earn this amount. Unexpectedly, Wenjiu suddenly raised his head and smiled at him. "In that case, I won't bother you." She quickly tied the rope back around her waist and ran out the door. Only Wang Nan was left standing there in a daze. Wenjiu ran for a while before stopping and thinking about Wang Nan's words for a while. Seeing that he wanted the rope so eagerly, the price would probably be more than 400. She would have to go to a few scrap yards to ask before she could estimate a suitable price. With this in mind, Wenjiu walked towards another scrap yard she knew. But before she took a few steps, she saw a gray-haired old woman tremblingly walking towards her. "Grandma Zhao." Wenjiu recognized Grandma Zhao at a glance and ran to her side with a smile. Granny Zhao looked at Wenjiu running over, coughed twice and smiled kindly. "Oh, my dear girl, I haven't seen you for a long time. I haven't come here recently because I haven't had any harvest." Wenjiu took the bag from Grandma Zhao's hand and helped her walk slowly forward. "I came to see you as soon as I had some goods." Wenjiu has always been eloquent. As long as she wants to talk, there is nothing she can't talk about. However, when she supported Grandma Zhao, she took her pulse and immediately found that Grandma Zhao was suffering from a cold and cough. So Wenjiu continued, "Grandma Zhao, what did you do when you went out just now?" "I didn't see you when I went to the scrapyard just now." Grandma Zhao smiled and replied, "Well, I went out to see a doctor. I have had a cough recently." Wenjiu understood this clearly. Granny Zhao often gave her a high price when she came to sell her scrap and took good care of her. So Wenjiu thought for a moment and said, "Oh, I heard from others that drinking more ginger juice can relieve cough." After hearing this, Grandma Zhao was a little confused, but the coughing feeling came back to her mind. She could only cough violently for a while before she said weakly, "What is ginger?" Wenjiu then realized that many ancient Chinese plants seemed to be missing from this world. Even if they were, many of their scientific names were different from what she knew. Wenjiu then took out a piece of ginger from his pocket and said, "This is it. Crush it, boil it with water, remove the residue, and drink the soup." In fact, the best thing for Grandma Zhao to do for her symptoms is to drink more ginger and apricot soup. But Wenjiu doesn't know whether there are almonds and licorice in this world. Granny Zhao took the ginger that Wenjiu handed over and looked at it. "My dear girl, is this what you're talking about? We call it horseradish, and it tastes very spicy." Wenjiu nodded. "This is it, Grandma. You can try it." After saying that, she stuffed the remaining gingers into Grandma Zhao's pocket. Grandma Zhao didn't want to let Wenjiu down, so after thanking him, she started to chat with Wenjiu again. "Until you get back to the scrapyard. As soon as the two stepped through the door, they saw Wang Nan bargaining with someone again. "Brother, I really didn't help you." Wang Nan held up a piece of iron and said earnestly, "The quality of your thing is really not good. If you put it anywhere else, I'm afraid they won't accept it." The burly middle-aged man standing in front of him asked in a trembling voice, "Brother, I got this with great difficulty. I should sell it for at least 200, right? 150 is not enough. Look at it. It's all rusty. We have to remove the rust after we take it back, and the cost will be 100. Wenjie followed Wang Nan's instructions and looked at the piece of iron. It was indeed covered with red marks and had several dents. But the middle-aged man still had no intention of giving in and begged. 180 is okay? The cold season is coming soon, and my whole family is waiting to buy the warming stone." Wang Nan wanted to refuse, but Grandma Zhao suddenly quickened her pace and walked closer, saying, "Then 180 will do, Xiao Wang." Wang Nan then saw Granny Zhao being supported by Wenjie. Since the boss had spoken, he couldn't refute it, so he could only pout and take out the star coin from his waist bag to give to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man also saw Grandma Zhao, and after taking the star coin, he hurriedly thanked her. "Thank you. Thank you." The middle-aged man was so excited that his eyes were red. "Thank you so much." Grandma Zhao smiled and waved her hand, sending the middle-aged man away. "My daughter, have you prepared all the supplies for this winter?" Speaking of the winter, Grandma Zhao suddenly thought of Wenjie, who seemed to be alone. She was just a 12-year-old child, and she didn't know how she would survive. "Not yet," Wenjie answered truthfully. She indeed had not prepared any supplies to survive the cold season. Before, the original owner would have found a way to get some warm stones, winter clothes, food, etc., but now she only has a few star coins on her body. Let alone preparing supplies, it is hard to say whether she will have food to eat next month. Grandma Zhao sighed, turned and walked into the house. Wang Nan felt inexplicably helpless. Could it be that Granny Zhao was so kind that she wanted to spend money to buy supplies for this little kid? "Little sister, where are your parents?" Wang Nan approached Wenjie and asked in a low voice while Granny Zhao entered the house. Wenjie glanced at him and said indifferently, "I don't know, he should be dead." She really didn't have any thoughts about family affection. In the previous world, she was an orphan, picked up and raised by her master. The original owner was also an orphan, and her parents were missing. Hearing this, Wang Nan was speechless and scratched his head in embarrassment. Fortunately, the awkward atmosphere did not last long, and Grandma Zhao slowly walked out with a bag of things. Seeing her walk out, Wenjie hurried forward to support Grandma Zhao. Granny Zhao patted Wenjie's hand with relief, handed her the bag and said, "These are some old winter clothes. If you don't mind, you can wear them." Wenjie took it with a smile and opened it. It was filled with colorful clothes, very similar to the big cotton padded jackets she had seen in the north. So Wenjie thanked her with a smile, and saw Grandma Zhao took out another crumpled piece of paper. "This is the enrollment flyer of 3047 College. You can go and try it." Grandma Zhao coughed twice and then continued, "You won't have to worry about food and accommodation when you go to school." Wenjie took the paper, unfolded it, and read it carefully. It said that the 3047 Academy was recruiting new reserve soldiers, and as long as they passed the physical test, they could enroll for free. Not only did they receive a scholarship, but they also provided food and accommodation. This is simply like sending a pillow when you are sleepy. Wenjie is worried about money. If he can go to school, at least he won't have to sleep in the wild anymore. Wenjie continued reading and saw the last line. The school stopped recruiting students on October 6, 209. Today seemed to be October 5th, Wenjie suddenly realized. So she picked up the bag of winter clothes, said goodbye to Grandma Zhao, and ran out of the recycling station to find the floating bus station. The main reason was that it was already past 3 in the afternoon, and the 3047 Academy was in another part of the city. If she walked there, she would have to walk until at least the evening. So Wenjie ran to the nearest station, gritted his teeth, took out the star coins, and got on the floating bus to College 3047. Although she slept in an abandoned floating bus every day, this was her first time riding one since arriving here. It feels similar to modern buses, except that the suspended buses here are 3-story and float in the air. The speed is completely incomparable to ordinary buses. After sitting for about 20 minutes, Wonjio arrived at the gate of 3047 College. Even though it is the last period for enrollment this year, the entrance of the college is still crowded with people queuing up to register. Wonjio found a line with fewer people and stood at the end, waiting patiently. Not long after, it was finally her turn. The teacher at the registration desk directly handed out a form and said, "Fill out the information first, then take the form and walk to the tent over there. Go inside to take the physical fitness test, and then turn right to go to the registration office." Wonjio nodded, picked up the pen and started filling it out quickly. After filling it out, she followed the teacher's instructions and went into a blue tent, where there were still many people waiting for the test. Wonjio looked at the testing instrument with some curiosity. There was a control panel next to a simple iron chair, but there was no display on the panel, only a light screen that was constantly flashing like a projector. As soon as the test subjects lay down on the chair, two tentacles appeared on the top of the chair and pressed against their foreheads. Then a bar graph appeared on the screen. Gold type ability level 1. Overall evaluation C+. The teacher in charge of recording quickly wrote out the form and handed it to the person who got down from the chair. Wonjio was confused. What is a superpower? The memories she received did not have anything to do with superpowers. So she found a teacher who looked friendly while she had to wait a little longer. "Heko, teacher, may I ask what superpowers are?" There were many poor students who tried to avoid the winter season by going to school, so Yuruman did not show any surprise. She squatted down with a smile and answered Wonjio. "Superpowers are a type of energy that each of us is born with, but before we learn how to use it, it's difficult for most people to detect their own energy. Of course, there are also many people who are born without superpowers. The superpowers currently researched by the Federation can be divided into 8 categories: gold, wood, water, fire, earth, light, darkness, and ice. After you enroll, the teachers will teach you in detail how to use these energies to assist the mecha. Doing a test before admission is also for the purpose of teaching you better in the future." Yuruman explained it in great detail, and Wonjio soon understood. She knew something about the mecha from the original owner's memory, but this ability sounded a bit like the elemental power she had awakened when she was practicing Taoism. Next, Wonjio wanted to ask a few more questions, but it was her turn to sit on the chair for the test, so she had to say thank you in a low voice, then ran to the chair and sat on it. After she lay down, she watched the tentacle-like thing slowly approach her forehead. It felt a little cold, and there was also a feeling that it seemed to be absorbing her energy. Yuruman watched the thin girl go for the test, so she walked to the control panel to see what the girl's values would be. However, the image displayed on the screen made her eyes widen. It turned out to be a double ability: Level 1 Wood ability, Level 1 Fire ability, Comprehensive Evaluation A+. In fact, according to the rarity of the dual abilities, it should have been judged as S+ level, but Wonjio's other numerical values were low, and the combination of the wood and fire elements was rather useless, so overall it became A+ level. It's actually a dual system ability. There is only one dual-powered person among 100,000, right? After hearing Wonjio's test results, everyone in the tent looked at her in amazement. Wonjio, on the other hand, didn't show any fluctuations. When she was practicing Taoism before, she was proficient in both wood and fire elements. Her master even said that she was born with a talent for alchemy. But after she blew up 5 alchemy furnaces, her master never mentioned her as a good candidate again. So Wonjio calmly sat up, walked to the teacher in charge of recording and said, "Teacher, my watch." The teacher finally reacted and quickly handed the form to Wonjio. Wonjio opened the curtain of the tent and walked towards the registration office, handing his form to the teacher there. "Congratulations on passing our institute's test." Hearing this, Wonjio couldn't help but smile. She was so happy when she thought that she wouldn't have to worry about going hungry or sleeping outdoors, and that she could even earn a scholarship if she worked hard. But the next second, the teacher in front of her gave her a bolt from the blue. "But unfortunately, according to verification, you are an illegal resident and do not meet the standard for free admission to our academy, so you need to pay a tuition fee of 8,000 star coins to enroll." 8,000? You can't get that much even if you sell her. Wonjio's eyes widened. How could she be an illegal resident? "Teacher, can you make some concessions? Look at my table. I have dual abilities. Wenjio's eyes moistened instantly and he choked up. Besides, I have no parents since I was a child. I don't want to be an illegal resident. Wenjio tried hard to show off her acting skills, but the teacher didn't buy it. I'm sorry, we can't change the school's rules without permission. Could it be that she really couldn't get free food and accommodation? Wenjiu was a little frustrated, but she still didn't give up and continued to ask, does our college have any quotas for poor students? Or can I write an IOU first and work and study to pay for it slowly? The teacher just shook his head apologetically and said, I'm sorry, if you can't pay the tuition. Wait a moment. Before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by Yurumin, who came rushing over. Yurumin walked to the registration office in high heels, stroked her curly hair, raised her red lips, and said with a smile, Zhou-sen, please handle the admission procedures for her first, and then arrange a part-time job for her on campus. The teacher called Zhou-sen was stunned for a moment, and said with some stammering, Director Yu, I'm afraid this is not in compliance with the regulations. Rules are dead, people are alive. Yurumin didn't look at him again. She stretched out her hand and pulled Wenjiu over to take a look. Little girl, you are a rare talent. I helped you get into school, so you must study hard in the future to repay me. Wenjiu looked at the stunning beauty in front of him, blinked and smiled. Thank you, beautiful sister. These words made Yurumin smile charmingly again. Okay, go back and get ready. Remember to report early when school starts in 3 days. Looking at Wenjia's receding back, Yurumin wiped away her previous smile and looked at Zhou-sen coldly. How can we let such a good candidate with dual abilities go like this? From now on, just follow the procedure. I will report the rest to the vice principal. After saying that, she left the registration office, leaving Zhou-sen standing there feeling rather awkward. He didn't mean to make things difficult for Wenjiu. It was a rule of 3047 college that illegal residents must pay tuition, but he quickly came to his senses and continued to process the procedures for others. Since he had successfully registered, Wenjiu didn't have to prepare supplies for the upcoming winter season. As there was still more than an hour before dark, Wenjiu decided to stroll around the city. It was her first time in the urban area, and technology was advancing rapidly in the interstellar age. Unlike the cities we knew in the past, this place is filled with colorful neon lights, and it gets brighter as the night goes on. Hover buses constantly weave in and out of the traffic, and occasionally a hover car circles in the air, the roar of which is deafening. After strolling around, Wenjiu saw the electronic screen outside the shopping mall in front of him, showing that Redstone Supermarket was having a discount promotion. Discount promotion. Wenjiu touched her chin. It seemed like a noteworthy news to a poor girl like her. So Wenjiu followed the crowd into the mall and followed the signs into the Redstone Supermarket on the underground first floor. There were quite a lot of items in the supermarket, but Wenjiu could recognize few of them. This was mainly because most of the animals and plants had undergone tremendous changes in the interstellar era, especially the plants, which were very different in appearance from before. Wenjiu carefully identified the vegetables and fruits section, and after searching for a while, she finally found the bitter almonds and licorice she wanted. The names of these two things have not changed, but the bitter almond has grown from a small piece to the size of an apple. Wenjiu secretly sighed in her heart. She had originally thought about weighing a few ounces, but now just one was enough. However, Wenjiu didn't have much money now, so after finding the item, she first looked at the price tag. Today's promotional price for bitter almonds is 8 star coins each. Today's promotional price of licorice is 12 star coins per bag. If it was the price of the previous Wenjiu, she would definitely turn around and leave, but she is different now. She will be able to go to school in 3 days and have food, clothes, and shelter, so she can still afford the 20 or so star coins. So Wenjiu decisively threw the 2 items into the basket behind him. It must be said that this machine is really convenient. There is no need to push the cart or carry the basket by yourself. You only need to temporarily enter your face and the basket will automatically follow you. Wenjiu then visited other areas and after buying 8 bottles of the lowest grade nutrient solution, he paid the bill and left the supermarket. Today's harvest was pretty good. Buy 8 low-level nutrient solutions and get 1 free. Wenjiu walked towards the exit with a smile on his face, carrying his bag. When she reached the mall exit, the sky outside was gray and it was raining heavily. The raindrops splashed on the ground. Wenjiu had no device to store his belongings, so he could only hold the shopping bags in his arms and rush into the rain. Wenjiu originally planned to walk back home after shopping, but the heavy rain disrupted her plan. She could only run to the nearest floating bus stop in the rain and use the 10 star coins again to take the bus to the stop closest to the garbage area. The speeding suspended bus was flying in the air, and the raindrops were dripping down the windows. When Jiu looked out the window, watching the neon lights change quietly. "We have arrived at B12 Street in Fengwu District. Please take your belongings with you and be ready to get off the bus." When Jiu got out of the car and the heavy rain had stopped. Fengwu District is a slum. The residential buildings here are of different heights, with lights sparsely on, and the scene is dilapidated and desolate everywhere. But even in such a shabby residence, there was no place for Wenjiu to stay. It takes more than half an hour to walk from here to the garbage area. Wenjiu did not stay here for too long. She pushed her wet hair back and walked towards the dark gravel road with her shopping bag in her arms, expressionless. The road leading to the garbage area has not been well maintained and is still the oldest dirt road. After the heavy rain, the dirt road was completely reduced to a muddy road. The yellow-red soil softened and turned into mud, and muddy water accumulated on the bumpy road surface. Just stepping on it would cause mud and water to stain your trouser legs. When Gio stood on tiptoe and walked carefully on the muddy and slippery ground. When she returned to the abandoned bus, she was already soaking wet and in a mess. The mud and water had solidified on her calves, turning her wheat-colored skin into a yellow earth color. However, what awaited her was not only the mess on her body, but also the fact that the interior of the car was filled with wooden boards and iron sheets to block the wind, but the gaps could not be filled. Rainwater flowed into the gaps, and a puddle of water accumulated on the floor. When Gio cleaned up the boxes that were corroded by rain with an indifferent expression, as if he was used to it, and then moved them to the open space outside. Then he squatted on the ground and soaked up the water with a rag, walked outside and wrung it out, then walked back in to soak up the water and wrung it out. He did this over and over again until there was only moisture in the car that could not be removed. He couldn't sleep on the floor tonight. So when Gio carried the boxes back to the car one by one and put them together, because the clothes and fabrics on the floor were soaked, when Gio could only hug himself and curl up on the hard boxes. The damp air and coldness that filled the car made Wenjiu unable to fall asleep. She could only stare at the rusty roof in a daze. This kind of day is really hard to endure. If only she had money, she could live in a big mansion, sit by the fire, and eat delicious food. The more Wenjiu thought about it, the more absorbed she became. She felt like the little match girl who was about to freeze to death. But she would never just fantasize like this. Wenjiu secretly set a small goal in her heart. She would make 100 million first. When she had money, she would buy a luxury house with whole house heating. She would have unlimited delicious food. She would have a soft mattress. She would make a lot of money. She would be a rich woman. Wenjiu's belief became more and more firm, and at the same time, she felt like there was a fire burning inside her body that was getting hotter and hotter. The fire gradually warmed her body, and she gradually felt sleepy. In the next few days, Wenjiu lived on the meat slices she had picked up and the nutrient solution she had bought. She did not go to the garbage dump to rummage through the trash again. Until the third day of school, Wenjiu packed up his various belongings early and walked to Grandma Zhao's recycling station to sell all the items that would not be used in the future. He also handed the bitter almonds and licorice he had bought earlier to Grandma Zhao. Grandma Zhao, soak the bitter almonds in warm water, peel and remove the tip, then mash them. Fry the licorice until it turns yellow, then grind it into fine powder. Then peel and wash the horseradish I gave you earlier. Chop it into small pieces and mash it with salt. Finally, boil all these together and drink the soup. It will cure your cough. When Wenjiu came this time, she saw that Grandma Zhao's cough was getting more intense, and she even coughed up blood. So she gave her careful instructions and told her to take good care of herself. After all, Grandma Zhao had taken very good care of her before. If it weren't for the bag of clothes Grandma Zhao gave her, Wenjiu would still have to wear torn cloth shoes now. After giving many instructions to Grandma Zhao, Wenjiu took the floating bus to College 3047. When Wenjiu arrived at College 3047, It was exactly 8 o'clock in the morning. The teacher was standing at the entrance of the college, waiting for everyone to gather before calling the roll. Seeing this, Wenjio did not delay and walked straight to a queue and waited. It was not until 8:30 that all the freshmen arrived. "We're about to go in. Listen up, no loud noises, no looking around." Hearing the sound, the chattering freshmen immediately quieted down and followed the teacher inside obediently. After walking for a while, we finally arrived at the spacious and bright auditorium. Wenjio glanced quietly at the podium and found that the female teacher who had helped her solve the problem before was also there. Before she could continue observing, the principal walked to the front and began to speak. "Welcome to the 3047 Academy. From now on, you will be the reserve soldiers of the major military regions of the Federation. But if you want to become a reserve soldier, you can't just sign up. You must go through a series of training and stand out." The teacher looked at everyone sternly. "I believe everyone knows that our training is cruel, so everyone must grit their teeth and persevere. I believe that hard work will definitely pay off. Finally, I wish you all a happy training life." After the principal and other teachers finished speaking, the freshmen were taken out by the teachers. Wenjio was in the front of the queue and soon followed the teacher into a building. "This is your dormitory, 2 people to a room." Wenjiobin had her head down, thinking about something, but when she heard the teacher's voice sound familiar, she raised her head and took a look. It turned out that he was an acquaintance, and the leader was the one who was at the registration office a few days ago. But Joseon didn't look at her. He just stood tall with his hands behind his back and continued. "The dormitories have already been assigned. You now have 15 minutes to find your dormitories. Change into your school uniforms and come down to assemble." After this was said, the students present looked at each other in bewilderment. In 15 minutes, they had to find their dormitories and change into their school uniforms before gathering. How could this amount of time be enough? Joseon squinted his eyes and looked at the motionless little idiots in front of him. He cleared his throat and was about to give a lecture when he saw a thin figure running quickly from the queue into the gate. Until her figure disappeared, the others were still standing there with surprise on their faces. "What are you still standing there for? Are you waiting for me to serve you some wine or tea?" Joseon shouted loudly, and the others reacted and scattered, running towards the gate. Joseon secretly sighed that these children still had a long way to go to transform from naughty children into well-trained reserve soldiers. Wenjio wanted to run away when Joseon finished speaking, but the others still did not move, so she hesitated for a moment. As Joseon's face became more and more gloomy, Wenjio suddenly understood and rushed into the dormitory building. As soon as she rushed through the gate, she was greeted by a huge holographic projection that scrolled and displayed everyone's dormitory assignment. Wenjio took a quick glance and saw her message appear on it. Wenjio, 12-year-old female, dormitory A3, 505. Wenjio remembered that she had quietly observed the environment on the way here, and A3 was the third building on the left. So she ran out of the left door and headed straight for the A3 building. When she ran into 505 panting, there was another girl in the dormitory who was also pale and almost out of breath. Wenjio nodded to the other party while speaking slowly. Both of them knew that now was not a good time to introduce themselves, so the girl just nodded in response. When Wenjio hurriedly put on her school uniform and came back to Joseon, Joseon looked at her in surprise and then reported the time. 13 minutes and 49 seconds. Hearing that he had not exceeded the time limit, Wenjio sat down on the ground to rest and wait for other students to return. However, when everyone came back, except Wenjio, only 2 others had not exceeded the time limit. So Joseon glanced at them and said, "Except for the 3 people who didn't exceed the time limit just now, the rest of you will run 25 laps around the playground." After that, no one dared to stay where they were for long, and they all started running forward. Wenjio secretly felt relieved as he watched the others running away. It was good enough as long as the mission was completed. The next second, Joseon looked at them with a smile and said, "You 3, go around the playground 20 times. Thank you all for your recommendation votes and collections. Thank you very much. 030, please use more recommendation votes to hit me. Don't pity me just because I'm a newcomer." QAQ, it wasn't just Wenjio's team that was asked to do running training. There were at least thousands of students in the college running at the same time. Wenjio slowly followed the crowd, thanks to the ability to escape that she had developed from picking up trash. At least she didn't feel particularly uncomfortable when running the first 5 laps. After running around in circles very quickly, fewer and fewer students were able to run, and many of them began to slow down or even walk. It was already the 10th lap, and when Gio began to feel exhausted, but she still maintained her previous speed and moved forward steadily. By the 15th lap, sweat was dripping from Wenjio's forehead, and the clothes on her back had already been soaked by sweat and stuck to her skin. She just gritted her teeth and jogged forward step by step. Even though sweat was running down her eyebrows and into the corners of her eyes, she tried hard to keep her eyes open and move forward. Until later, she felt her legs were as heavy as if they were filled with lead. If someone told her to stop now, she would fall to the ground immediately. Finally, she made it to the 19th lap. She was already feeling dizzy, but there were still 30 or so people running forward like her. Not long after, when Gio felt his vision gradually becoming blurry and his legs moved stiffly like machines. Just when she was about to give up, she inexplicably felt a surge of strength in her body, making her limbs feel lighter, as if soaking in a hot spring had washed away her fatigue. Seeing that every student reached the finish line, she didn't have time to think about anything else. She just gritted her teeth and ran forward faster. Finally, she finished the physical training that the teacher suddenly arranged. The teacher handed her a bottle of nutrient solution to help her recover her strength, and also told her that she could go to the cafeteria for lunch now. The other party was also very kind to tell her that she could get free fried chicken in the cafeteria today, but the quantity was limited, so she had to hurry. She had long been so hungry that she could no longer bear it, so after drinking the nutrient solution, she quickly walked towards the cafeteria. Well, she asked an enthusiastic classmate about the location of the cafeteria, otherwise she really wouldn't know where the cafeteria was. So after expressing her gratitude, she hurried towards the cafeteria. Fortunately, this place was not far from the cafeteria, and she arrived there safely soon. Detecting someone coming, the glass door slid open silently to both sides. It was noon at the moment, and the cafeteria was crowded with people. Everyone lined up in an orderly manner in front of the windows waiting to get their meals. This gave Wenju a familiar feeling. When she was sent to study by her master, she also lined up in the cafeteria to get food at mealtime. Wenju quickly found the window where limited free fried chicken was available among the many windows, so she took the tray from the shelf next to her, walked to the back of the line and started queuing. Wenju felt very happy when he thought about eating delicious fried chicken soon. The students in front took their plates and left one after another. Before leaving, they were stamped with a square stamp by the person in charge of distributing fried chicken. It looks like pork stamp. Wenju was lost in thought when it was her turn to get the fried chicken. She walked to the transparent window and found that the staff inside were not the cafeteria aunties and uncles, but students wearing school uniforms like her. The only difference is that the people inside are wearing masks and aprons. But Wenju didn't ask too many questions. When it was her turn, she handed over the tray. The person inside took a look and quickly placed a portion of fried chicken wrapped tightly in tin foil on her tray. After receiving the fried chicken, Wenju quickly found an empty seat and sat down, ready to have a big meal. She peeled off the tin foil excitedly, but there was no golden fried chicken inside as she had imagined. Not only was the chicken fried to half yellow and half black, but there were even a few chicken feathers on its body. Wenju's smiling face suddenly fell, and she pulled off a chicken leg and looked at it. What kind of skill does it take to achieve the effect of being burnt on the outside and still bleeding on the inside? Moreover, the fishy smell has not been removed. Wenju can smell the pungent smell without even tasting it. Is this a scam? What kind of fried chicken is this? Wenju wanted to go and argue with the cafeteria staff, but when she looked around, she found that the food on their trays could not even be called food. There were blue stir-fried vegetables, meat that had been cooked into a paste, food that had been burnt beyond recognition, and rice that looked like porridge but had too much water added to it. For Wenju, these things were hard to swallow just by looking at them, but these students ate them without blinking, as if they were already used to it. Could it be that the cafeteria only sells these dark dishes? Wenju suddenly panicked. As a foodie, she was extremely scared. She looked at every window with trepidation. If she hadn't looked, She might have had some expectations, but after this look, she discovered something. Is this a world where only dark cuisine exists? Wenjiu felt mixed emotions, and after sitting back in her seat, she fell into a daze. Are you Wenjiu? Wenjiu, who was in a daze, was suddenly patted on the shoulder. She turned around and saw a thin boy staring at her. Are you Wenjiu? Li Shanyan asked again, impatience written all over his face. Wenjiu looked at him and nodded slightly. Yes, then come with me. You owe tuition, right? Teacher, you arranged for you to work in our cafeteria to pay off your debt. Li Shanyan put his hands in his pockets and glanced at Wenjiu. Wenjiu thought for a moment, but she still didn't know who Teacher Yu was, so she asked, who is Teacher Yu? Yu Rumen, the very beautiful one. Li Shanyan was too lazy to explain too much. After confirming that she was a good person, he turned and walked towards a silver iron gate. Wenjiu stood up and followed him towards the iron gate, while quickly analyzing the situation in his mind. The very beautiful teacher should be the one who helped her solve the registration problem a few days ago. She asked her to work to pay off her debts. It should be that the tuition problem has not been solved, so she has to work part-time to earn money for her studies. After Wenjiu followed Li Shanyan through the iron gate, they walked around and finally entered an office. Arrive. I hope all the little cuties can give me more recommendation votes. I wish you all a happy day. If you like it, please click on the collection. I will be very grateful for your collection and recommendation votes. There were 3 boys sitting in the office. They looked to be about 14 or 15 years old. When they saw Li Shanyan and Wenjiu come in, the sounds of their laughter and playfulness suddenly disappeared, and they all looked at Wenjiu. Are you the new student that Teacher Yu arranged for? The strongest boy among the 3 spoke first. He sat on the sofa with his legs crossed and looked at Wenjiu. Wenjiu didn't respond. She calmly put her hands behind her back and said, no matter which teacher introduced you, you have to follow the rules when you come to our cafeteria student department. Gang saw that Wenjiu didn't say anything and thought she was scared. He sneered disdainfully, from now on, just come here to punch in at lunch and dinner time every day. If you owe debts, the school will deduct half of your monthly salary. As for the remaining half, the school will automatically send it to your StarNet account. But according to our rules, you must give us half of it. Do you understand? Wenjiu lowered her eyes and thought, if I give this money to you, I will be left with nothing? Although she didn't know how much the salary for working in the cafeteria was, after deducting half and half, how many star coins would she get? So Wenjiu raised her head. What if I don't want to pay? After he finished speaking, everyone started laughing as if they had heard a huge joke. Little sister, don't play such jokes with your brothers. Gang felt like he was about to laugh to tears, but Wenjiu still repeated with a serious face. What if I don't want to hand it in? Seeing that she seemed to be asking the question seriously, several people gradually stopped laughing and revealed a fierce aura. If you don't pay, you'll either be beaten or you won't be able to work here anymore. Wenjiu lowered her head again, and everyone thought that she was just like those poor students before who dared to ask but not to resist. The next second, Wenjiu looked up and said with a smile, excuse me, I don't want to hand it in. After saying that, Wenjiu took a step forward and prepared to go back. Gang sat on the sofa, looking at her thin figure, and sneered again. Poor jerk, do you think that just saying no will solve the problem? Wenjiu did not turn back because of his taunting, but walked faster and faster. This made Gang very unhappy, so he winked at the other 2 people, and they immediately stood up and rushed towards Wenjiu. Seeing that they were about to rush to Wenjiu, the 2 men swung their fists with determination to win. However, they didn't expect Wenjiu to suddenly turn around and whip the 2 men's arms, leaving a bloody mark on their raised arms. Senior, isn't this a bit unethical? Wenjiu still kept smiling, but his gray-blue eyes were full of coldness as he looked at them. The 2 were caught off guard and whipped, and were a little angry. Soon they swung their fists again, but this time their fists suddenly ignited orange-red flames, and the temperature around them also rose. It was the first time for Wenjiu to see someone use supernatural powers, and she felt inexplicably excited. But she did not take it lightly, and after quickly retreating a distance, she swung the whip again. This time the whip did not fall on the 2 men's arms, but wrapped around their legs. Wenjiu pulled hard, and the two men who were running fell to the ground in an instant. Let them have an intimate contact with the floor. Even did the splits. After seeing them fall, Wenjio couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He never expected that the rope he picked up would be so useful. However, before Wenjio could observe for a while, a gust of wind suddenly blew towards her. Wenjio reacted immediately and tried to turn her head to avoid it, but the gust of wind was too fast and it brushed past her face and then hit the wall behind her. Click. The stinging sensation was like a needle prick, and warm blood dripped down her cheek. If you ask me, a waste like you is. Before Shurgang finished speaking, Wenjio rushed towards him with a dagger in hand. But Shurgang didn't take her seriously and continued to shoot several gusts of wind at Wenjio. Although Wenjio dodged nimbly, one of the strikes still cut his arm. But the stinging sensation made her even more excited, and she quickened her pace again, attacking like a ghost. This made Shurgang feel like alarm bells were ringing in his heart, and an inexplicable sense of panic surged into his heart. He instinctively wanted to close the door and hide, but he didn't know when Wenjio flashed in front of him, holding a dagger, and asked him with a smile, "Do you want to close the door? How about I help you?" These words made Shurgang shudder. Before he could react, Wenjio's dagger was pressed against his neck. The fear of having his skin cut made Shurgang unable to control his emotions any longer. I was wrong. But Wenjio did not let him go because of his begging. Instead, he kicked him into the office, closed the door, and looked at him with a smile. Then Shurgang's screams continued to sound, scaring Li Shanyan outside the door and the two people on the ground into panic. Li Shanyan was the first to react and used the wisdom ring to call the teacher. It was dinner time, and Zhou Sunbin was eating in the cafeteria, but after receiving the call, he rushed to the scene. Zhou Sun's mood suddenly became heavy. What's going on? Li Shanyan was the one who was least affected. He pointed at the office door and trembled. Zhou Sun suddenly felt something was wrong and quickly opened the door. He saw a little girl with her back to him. The more he looked, the more familiar she seemed to him, so he asked tentatively, "Wenjio?" Wenjio had heard the noise outside a long time ago. She turned around with a smile and asked, "Teacher, what can I do for you?" Li Shanyan didn't dare to look at Zhou Sun's cold eyes. He just lowered his head and whispered. Shurgang was kicked into the office by her, and then he didn't dare say the rest. He and the other two heard Shurgang's screams with their own ears. Zhou Sun ignored Li Shanyan's words. He took out the medical kit he carried with him, then squatted down and asked softly, "Student Wenjio, have you seen Student Shurgang?" Wenjio was like an innocent child at this moment. He nodded obediently and pointed to a wooden cabinet in the room. "Good girl." Zhou Sun touched her head to comfort her, then stood up and walked towards the wooden cabinet. Then Zhou Sun stood up, took a deep breath, grabbed the handle, and opened the wooden cabinet. "Thank you all for your support. Please give me more recommendations, QAQ. If you like it, please click to collect it. Your support is my motivation." Like Heart 030 number. I don't know what happened to this chapter. A lot of it was automatically deleted by the cute review. The author has tried his best to make up for the deleted parts. There may still be some places that are not smooth. If you find any incoherent or incoherent places while reading the text, please leave a message to the author to remind Ors there was a person squatting inside, shivering constantly. "Shurgang, come out." Even though the man covered his face, Zhou Sun could still recognize that this was Shurgang, a third-year student. Shurgang carefully moved his hand away, and when he saw the person coming, he was so excited that he almost cried. "Werwu, Teacher Zhou." Shurgang originally wanted to crawl out of the wooden cabinet, but when he saw Wenjio smiling at him from behind Zhou Sun, he instantly shrank back. Zhou Sun was speechless when he saw him like this. "Come out quickly and follow me to the training office." "Teacher Zhou, I'm in pain," Shurgang said with a sob. "Am I going to die?" However, Zhou Sun looked him up and down and said, "Stop pretending and come out now." Shurgang wanted to tell people about Wenjio's evil deeds, but he broke out in a cold sweat because of the pain just because he moved a little in the cabinet. Zhou Sun urged again impatiently. In his opinion, Shurgang didn't have a single scar on his body, so how could he dare to cry out in pain? But what he didn't know was that Wenjio deliberately left no marks, and all his punches hit the most painful acupuncture points on Shurgang's body. Seeing this, Gang had to endure the pain and climb out of the wooden cabinet. But every step he took was extremely painful, and in the end, Li Shanyan supported him and slowly walked to the teaching office. "Tell me what happened." Yu Rumen glanced at them and said, "Don't even think about lying. The surveillance will be here soon." Gang was about to complain when Yu Rumen glared at him. Then he watched Yu Rumen pull Wenjiao, who had been keeping her head down, over and let her sit on the soft sofa, and poured her a cup of hot water to warm herself up. "Little sister, tell your sister what happened." Yu Rumen sat next to Wenjiao, crossed her long legs, and looked at her. Wenjiao only whispered, "They bullied me." Gang has always relied on his relative working as a teacher in the cafeteria to bully people, so Yu Rumen has heard about these things, but she has not been able to find any evidence to clean up the mess. So she continued to ask Wenjiao, "And then? Then I fought back." Wenjiao could have pretended to be innocent and got away with it, but if the surveillance footage was on, he would have been exposed. But in this case it was self-defense, so Wenjiao had no intention of getting away with it by pretending to be innocent. After listening to this, Yu Rumen found a medical kit from the cabinet. She first cleaned the blood on Wenjiao's wound, then took out a tube of ointment, squeezed out some, and gently applied it on the wound. Then Wenjiao watched his wound begin to heal visibly after being covered with transparent ointment. "Here's to you. Don't hurt yourself next time you fight." As soon as Yu Rumen finished speaking, Zhou walked in, took out a metal ball from his pocket, and threw it to Yu Rumen. The other party caught it steadily, pressed the switch, and the metal ball opened in her hand. A beam of light shot out from it to form a light curtain, and then the surveillance video began to play. The video recorded the scenes from Li Shanyan finding Wenjiao in the cafeteria to the two of them walking into the office. Yu Rumen pulled a chair and sat down, yawning nonchalantly. Until the scene where Wenjiao walked out of the office, she and Zhou both believed that Wenjiao must have been bullied by Gang. But within a few minutes, they discovered that they were wrong. Yu Rumen looked at Wenjiao's flexible skills and precise movements in the picture, and her eyes became brighter. She really found a good talent. When the video was finished, Gang cried out, "Teacher Yu, you saw it. We really didn't do anything." However, Yu Rumen sneered and looked at him. "You didn't do anything? The four of you teamed up to bully a freshman, and you call that you didn't do anything?" Hearing this, Gang shrank his neck in frustration. This person who beat him to the point where he couldn't move could be called a new life? But he didn't dare to say this out loud. "Okay, Wenjiao, you can go back to the dormitory first." Yu Rumen resumed her charming and attractive demeanor. "You guys just wait for Teacher Wang to pick you up." Wenjiao responded obediently and did not forget to close the door when leaving the teaching office. She had just taken a few steps when she heard the sound of Yu Rumen beating someone from inside. This force was much stronger than when she attacked just now. Even the screams of Gang and the others were louder. Wenjiao didn't stay for long and went straight back to his dormitory. The roommate he met earlier was now taking a nap on the bed, so Wenjiao quietly closed the door and walked to his bed. She was so busy putting on her school uniform and returning to the team that she didn't pay attention to the environment in the dormitory. Wenjiao sat on the bed and looked around. Although the furnishings here were a bit simple, at least it could shelter from the wind and rain, so there was no need to worry about being flooded. And the configuration of various items is quite complete. There are 2 sets of school uniforms for summer and winter, as well as 4-piece bedding sets and some daily necessities. Wenjiao was very satisfied with this. He looked at his bedside table again and saw a small box with a new student handbook underneath it. She first picked up the box and opened it, revealing a bronze wisdom ring. Then Wenjiao checked the freshman handbook again and realized that the college had equipped every freshman with a wisdom ring. Reading is really good. Wenjiao decisively put the wisdom ring on her finger. As soon as she put it on, she felt a weak electric current surging in her body. Then she tried to control it with her mind and saw a small light curtain popped out from the wisdom ring. "A new user is detected. Do you want to bind the user?" A mechanical and cold voice suddenly sounded in her mind. Wenjiao was stunned for just a moment before he reacted. He tried to click on the light screen with his finger, and the picture changed quickly. "Start binding users. Please set your personal information." Wenjiao followed the instructions step by step and slowly operated, feeling like an old man who was out of touch with the times. It took me a long time to complete the information entry, and then I had to set up my personal image. Please set the StarNet personal image of user Jia Taiwan Gan 9. The Federation's universal network is the Star Network. In addition to the necessary real information, user nicknames and personal images can be set at will. So Wen Jiao entered the nickname Jia Taiwan Gan 9 without thinking, and then she started to create characters happily. But just as she browsed through the available appearances and clothing, a message suddenly popped up on the screen. 3047 Zhou Sun requests to add you as a friend. Added successfully. Wen Jiao originally thought that Zhou Sun just wanted to add a friend, but he ended up sending her a bunch of messages popping up. It caused her character creation interface to freeze and return to the normal desktop. 3047 Zhou Sun. The matter between you and Shirt Gang has been resolved. 3047 Zhou Sun. From now on, you will be in charge of a counter in the cafeteria. After the college deducts the tuition fee, the rest of the income will be transferred to your StarNet account. 3047 Zhou Sun. I will send you the specific work of the canteen later. The working hours are 11 o'clock 1300 hours and 1700 hours 1900 hours. 3047 Zhou Sun. You know that our college allows students to choose their own courses, right? Just avoid taking classes during work hours. I really didn't expect Zhou Sun to be so talkative, but Wen Jiao still replied to the message. Family Wealth 9. Okay, Mr. Zhou. 3047 Zhou Sun. Nice name. After Wen Jiao replied to the message, she did not continue to tamper with the person, but continued to flip through the freshman handbook, preparing to make plans for her upcoming part-time work and study life. Hey, you're back? The girl who had been sleeping soundly in bed finally woke up and looked at Wen Jiao with sleepy eyes. Today's update has been delivered. I hope everyone can vote for it. Thank you so much. I also thank the cute people who have collected it. If you like it, please support me. Unlike Wen Jiao's wheat-colored skin, the other person had fair skin and delicate features, like a doll. The girl on the bed opposite rubbed her eyes and sat up. Heko, I'm Qiao Shishir. Heko, I'm Wen Jiao. Seeing her friendly attitude, Wen Jiao introduced himself generously. Qiao Shishir is very outgoing. Even Wen Jiao, who prides himself on being a chatterbox, feels that he cannot talk as much as she does. Which district are you from? Jiao, what classes are you going to take? I'm almost dead tired after running 25 laps during the day. Wen Jiao was operating on the screen while referring to the freshman manual, while listening to Qiao Shishir's various chatter. However, Qiao Shishir had no ill intentions, so Wen Jiao would still take the time to answer a few questions. After completing some operations, Wen Jiao finally submitted the courses he had selected. Qiao Shishir next to her widened her eyes and asked her, You actually chose so many courses. Do you plan to be an armed mecha soldier in the future? Armed mecha soldiers? Wen Jiao was a little confused, as she had never learned about this aspect of knowledge. She just wanted to learn all the courses that interested her, as she didn't want to waste the tuition fees. Seeing her confused face, Qiao Shishir enthusiastically began to do science popularization work. We are now reserve soldiers. After we have completed 5 years of training and passed the assessment, we will choose a branch of the military. There are 3 major categories: commanders, armed mecha soldiers, and logistic soldiers. As for the more detailed branches, I don't know what they are. Wen Jiao nodded. It turned out that the troops could be upgraded to higher level types in the future, but she has not thought about her long-term military career and is only thinking about how to make money to pay off her debts. Today is the first day of school for freshmen, but there are no classes in the afternoon. So Wen Jiao stayed in the dormitory and chatted with Qiao Shishir for the whole afternoon. It was almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon when Wen Jiao headed towards the cafeteria. Zhou Sun had already sent over the canteen work instructions, which actually meant doing tasks like washing dishes, cooking, and serving meals during fixed time periods. Normally, Wen Jiao should have been assigned a job after she reported, but after Shigang's incident, after discussion among the teachers, Wen Jiao ended up running a window on her own. She can also recruit classmates to work here, but the prerequisite is that she has to be able to offer wages. However, running a window on his own is not difficult for Wen Jiao. She used to love delicious food, but her master always asked them to reduce their appetite so that they could practice fasting. But Wen Jiao felt that life was meaningless if people didn't eat. So she often cooks delicious food for herself in private. After when Gio entered the cafeteria, the senior classmate who came to greet her was much gentler this time. He took her to the assigned window and explained many work matters before leaving. When Jiu looked around and found that the space was relatively small. The kitchen stove looked like it had been used for a long time, and there was even grease on it. All the basic seasonings are available, but the packaging has not been opened yet. She walked to the storage shelf and took a look. There were not many ingredients on it, except for a large bag of flour, a large bag of potatoes and eggs, and a bunch of large onions. When Jiu remembered that the student who had just received him said that the food ingredients were uniformly distributed by the teacher who managed the canteen every week, and the food ingredients distributed at each window were different. So she didn't think much about it and cleaned the place first, then started thinking about what food she could make with these ingredients. After much thought, I decided to make some plain noodles and fried potatoes. When Jiu did what he said, he first took out an appropriate amount of flour, water, and salt and kneaded them into a smooth dough. Then he peeled the potatoes one by one, cut them into pieces, and soaked them in water. Then she washed the onions. The onions here were twice as thick as the previous big ones. In order to make the food more beautiful, when Gio patiently cut them into small pieces. She cut a full bowl of chopped green onions and stopped when she thought it was enough. Thinking about mixing the cane and potatoes, when Gio thought he could make some chili oil first. So he started looking for ingredients in the kitchen. When Gio found a bag of chili powder and white sesame seeds, poured some of each into a bowl, and then poured hot oil on top. The simple version of chili oil is ready. But there was still some time before the dough was ready. So when Jiu picked up another frying pan and fried a large plate of fried eggs one by one and left them on the plate. When the time was almost up, when Jiu picked up the rolling pin and deftly rolled the dough into a sheet of suitable thickness. Then pick up a kitchen knife and cut it into noodles of even thickness, and you now have the most basic staple food. There were still 20 minutes before dinner time at 5 o'clock, so when Jiu simply made himself a bowl of noodles to practice. While waiting for the water in the pot to boil, when Jiu first took out a large bowl, washed it clean, and started adding seasonings. Because there was no lard, she could only use sesame oil, light soy sauce, and salt to adjust the seasoning. Then when Jiu grabbed a ball of noodles and put it into the pot. After a few minutes, he quickly took it out and put it into a bowl. Then he scooped a large spoonful of noodle soup and poured it on top, and finally sprinkled some chopped green onions on it. The students at other windows were all busy. Only one Jiu was leisurely slurping his noodles. She thought it was a pity that there was no lard, otherwise the noodles would be more fragrant. However, compared to those dark dishes, this bowl of noodles was a delicacy. When Jiu was enjoying his meal when suddenly a man came up and knocked on the transparent glass at the window. Jiu, I heard from Teacher Zhou that you work in the cafeteria, so I came to support you. Xiao Shishir smiled sweetly, pointed at the bowl of noodles that when Jiu was holding, and continued, I want a bowl of this. Do you have any other dishes? Give me one too. When Jiu nodded and swallowed the last mouthful of noodles, then put down the bowl and started to get busy. She first scooped out an appropriate amount of potato strips from the basin where the potatoes were soaked, then lit another large pot and poured in oil to heat it up. When the oil was almost heated up, when Jiu threw the long potato strips in. Then he grabbed a handful of noodles and put them into the hot water used to cook the noodles and started cooking. By the time the potato strips were fried, the noodles on the other side were almost cooked. So when Jiu first scooped up the potato strips with a strainer and set them aside to dry, and then scooped the noodles into the bowl. When Jiu skillfully poured soup on it and sprinkled chopped green onions on it, then finally picked up a golden fried egg and placed it on top. Wow, what is this? Xiao Shishir took the bowl of noodles with curiosity on her face, and the aroma that came to her face made her a little dazed for a moment. She actually doesn't like eating very much because the food is so bad, so she always relies on drinking nutrient solution to fill her stomach. But the aroma made her feel her stomach growling, which was rare. Yangchun noodles. When Jiu answered her as he poured the potato strips into a large bowl and started mixing the potatoes. She added the various ingredients skillfully, her movements smooth and seamless. After mixing, when Jiu put the Tiankin potatoes into a small bowl, garnished it with some chopped green onions, and then handed it to Xiao Shishir. This smells good too. What is this? Xiao Shishir smelled a completely different aroma from the Yangchun noodles she had had before. and she immediately felt her mouth watering. This is Tiankan potato. Go and try it first to see if it tastes good, and then come and pay for it. The main reason was that Wenju hadn't thought about the pricing yet, and thought that Xiao Shishir would not run away with the order, so he simply let Xiao Shishir take it first, and he would pay after he had decided on the price. So Xiao Shishir thanked him with a smile on her face, then quickly took the 2 bowls and found a seat to sit down. Xiao Shishir looked at the bowl of steaming noodles and carefully picked up a piece with chopsticks and took a bite. Although the noodles are soaked in soup, they are still chewy, and you can feel the taste of repeated kneading and grinding while chewing. Taking another bite of the golden fried egg, the orange-red egg liquid slightly flowed out. It mixed with the fragrant soup, making Xiao Shishir unable to stop. She had never eaten such delicious food before. Xiao Shishir lowered her head and ate noodles mouthful after mouthful, which made several students who had just walked in from the cafeteria very curious. When they got closer, they smelled an alluring aroma they had never smelled before. "Classmate, what are you eating?" Xiao Shishir didn't answer them, but just pointed at Wenju's window. Because she had finished her noodles, she was drinking the soup slowly. Wang Dalong and his companions couldn't help swallowing their saliva just by watching her drink the soup. So a few people walked to Wenju's window and asked, "Did that female classmate buy her food here?" Wenju looked at them and nodded, then said, "Yangshan noodles are 20 star coins a bowl, and Tiankan potatoes are 15 star coins a portion." The names of these 2 foods were unfamiliar to them, because the cafeteria only sold burnt potatoes, dark water spinach, and juicy but undercooked fried chicken. But Wang Dalong paid with his wisdom ring without hesitation. "Give me 1 of each." The other 2 were a little hesitant at first, as Wenju looked unfamiliar, and they were worried that they might be cheated. But they thought about it again. Xiao Shishir had just eaten so happily, so there shouldn't be any problem. So the 2 of them happily paid the bill and waited for Wenju to serve the food. Wenju's movements were so quick that the 3 of them were shocked. Originally, they were worried that Wenju was the only one at this window, and whether they would have to wait for a long time. But she finished 3 bowls of plain noodles and 3 servings of Tiankan potatoes in a short while, so Wang Dalong and others took them with great anticipation and hurried to their seats. After sitting down, Wang Dalong looked at the bright yellow Tiankan potatoes and decisively picked up a piece and put it into his mouth. It has a slightly crispy texture, and the perfect blend of chili oil and chopped green onions instantly captured Wang Dalong's taste buds. It was so delicious. Wang Dalong had never eaten such delicious food since he was a child. The taste was unbelievable to him, and he picked up another piece. The stimulation of the chili instantly rushed to the tip of his tongue. It was so spicy that he was sweating a little, but he felt it was very refreshing. As for the 2 people beside him, one couldn't stop picking up chopsticks to eat noodles, while the other couldn't stop eating Tiankan potatoes. By the end of the meal, the corners of the 3 people's mouths were red from the spiciness, but they were all conquered by the stimulating taste and found it extremely satisfying. The fragrant taste of Yangshan noodles made them unable to stop eating. As they chewed the chewy noodles, the aroma of the noodles kept wafting in their mouths. By the time Wang Dalong finished the last mouthful of soup and put down the bowl, the 2 people who had been sitting next to him had already gone to Wenju's window to buy again. Wang Dalong stared at the empty bowls on the table, then rushed to the window and said to Wenju, "Chef, give me another portion of each." "No, 2 portions. 2 portions of each." Because Wang Dalong and his friends later sat as close to Wenju's window and ate like crazy, when it was time for dinner, many students came to Wenju's window to buy food after smelling the delicious food. They all came with the mentality of giving it a try, and some even thought that the food Wang Dalong and his companions ate was added with flavor enhancers or something like that. As a result, when these people tasted the food made by Wenju, they all finished eating quickly and ran back to the window to buy more. As time went by, more and more people lined up at Wenju's window. After finishing a bowl of plain noodles and 2 servings of candy cane potatoes, Xiao Shishir took the initiative to run to the kitchen to help Wenju. Wenju was responsible for preparing the meals, and she helped pass the prepared meals to the classmates. "I want 2 servings of Tiankan potatoes. 3 bowls of plain noodles, thank you. Give me 5 servings of each. Don't push me, the one behind me. What's the hurry? Can you finish all the food you bought? Can we, who are only buying 1 portion, go first?" The cafeteria, which was originally quiet for dining, was now filled with a rare noise. Xiao Shishir quickly shouted, "Don't worry. Please wait patiently." Wenju naturally also heard the noise outside. Because there were many people placing orders, she could now prepare 5 servings of Tianqian potatoes at one time. She counted the remaining ingredients while performing deft movements with her hands. Sure, there are about 34 servings of Tianqian potato and 18 servings of Yangchun noodles left. Wenju looked at Xiao Shishir and said, "Count the number of people. If there are more people, we won't sell them. Let them go early tomorrow." After hearing this, Xiao Shishir immediately said to the outside, "Students in line, please pay attention. There are only 34 servings of Tianqian potato and 18 servings of Yangchun noodles left." As soon as he finished speaking, the students at the end of the line suddenly became panicked. "Fairy, can you please ask the chef to be kind? We haven't eaten yet." "That's right. How come it sold out so quickly?" Xiao Shishir looked at Wenjio somewhat bewilderedly. The crowd was making a lot of noise. Wenjio, who was cooking noodles, heard it and shook his head at Xiao Shishir. She also wanted to sell more and make more money, but she had only prepared so many ingredients today, and it would take nearly an hour to make handmade noodles. So Xiao Shishir said to the outside again, "We are running out of ingredients. You guys should come early to line up at noon tomorrow." With that said, the people behind in line couldn't say anything and could only hope that the people ahead would buy fewer copies. While Wenjio was busy, Zhou-sun and Yurumen also came to the cafeteria. Yurumen originally wanted Gang to leave the student department of the cafeteria, but she couldn't find any evidence against his relative who was in charge. In the end, Wenjio opened a window alone, and his income was directly divided with the college. Gang and his colleagues continued to manage other working students, but prohibited them from collecting protection fees. This decision seemed to have allowed Wenjio to avoid being bullied by Gang and his men, but in fact, she was still being bullied. As a newcomer, who would buy from her own window? Moreover, Yurumen didn't even know if Wenjio could cook, so she ran towards the cafeteria as soon as she finished her work. On the way, she happened to meet Zhou-san, who was also there to take care of Wenjio, and the two of them simply came together. "Oh, I don't know if Wenjio can cook." Yurumen was a little worried along the way, always feeling that she had not helped Wenjio to gain the rights he deserved. Zhou-san comforted her. "Even if she can't cook, we can secretly find a student who can cook to help her." Both of them were a little worried, and after entering the cafeteria, they began looking for Wenjio's window. However, after looking around, they did not see Wenjio, but only saw a long line of students in front of a window. Wenjio didn't come? Yurumen was puzzled. "She should be here. I saw her checking in at the student section in the cafeteria," Zhou-san said. So the two of them walked around again and returned to the window where there were so many people. They walked through the crowd to the glass window, and only then did they see that the petite figure cooking noodles inside was Wenjio. "Today's update has been delivered. Please collect it. If you like it, please vote for it. QAQ love it." Looking at the little figure inside, he was skillfully putting seasoning into the bowl, then turned around and operated 4 colanders at the same time to scoop up the noodles. This left Yurumen and Zhou-sun stunned. The two repeatedly confirmed the person in front of them, but finally had to admit that this man who was as skilled as an old chef was Wenjio. When Jiogong handed a few bowls of noodles to Xiao Shishir when he saw Yurumen and Zhou-san standing outside the window. Because she was busy with work, Wenju just waved at them. After saying heko, she continued to work. Although Yurumen and Zhou-san were very surprised by her skillful skills, they did not disturb her too much. The two saw that there were too many people queuing here and wanted to go to other windows to get food. But when they saw the bowls in the students' hands, they all swallowed their saliva inexplicably. The wonderful aroma that they had never smelled before attracted them to join the long line. After waiting in line for a while, when it was Yurumen and her friend's turn, there were only 2 servings of Tianqian potatoes left. After taking the small bowl of Tianqian potatoes, the two found an empty seat and sat down. "This looks pretty good." Yurumen picked up a piece of Tianqian potato and took a look. The bright yellow fried potato strips were coated with bright red chili oil and dotted with a few chopped green onions. The tempting smell wafted from the potatoes from time to time, tempting Yurumen to take a bite. After just one bite, She was stunned and chewed the potato carefully with a dull expression. Seeing her like this, Joseon couldn't help but ask, "Is it not delicious?" Unlike other students, he would occasionally go out to eat at restaurants, but the food in restaurants outside was only slightly better than that in the cafeteria. Yurumin is even more different. As a school leader, it is common for her to travel on business and socialize, and she has also been to many big hotels to taste delicious food. But this Tiancan potato is completely superior to those so-called hotel chefs. No, this is really delicious. Yurumin came back to her senses from the impact of the aroma. Try it now. This taste was something Yurumin had never tasted before. She had often seen descriptions of delicious food in past materials, but now she finally knew what it felt like to taste delicious food. Joseon then picked up the Tiancan potato and put it in his mouth to taste it. He was also stunned. The spicy aroma of chili oil hits your taste buds first, and then the crispy potatoes bring out a sweet aftertaste when you chew them. Leaves a lingering fragrance on your lips and teeth. This tastes so delicious. Joseon, who has always been introverted, couldn't help but sigh. But he only said this one sentence, and continued to eat the Tiancan potatoes attentively, completely immersed in the world of food. The two of them didn't have time to discuss until they had finished the Tiancan potatoes in their bowls. I think with Wenjia's technology, he can run the canteen business just by selling Tiancan potatoes. Joseon said first. Yurumin shook her head. I think she can bring us more than just this surprise. We haven't even tried the sold-out plain noodles yet. But this serving of Tiancan potatoes alone was enough of a surprise for both of them. Since the dishes and chopsticks sent out from each window were marked, Wenjio and Xiao Shishir had to stay to collect them. So Yurumin and the other person didn't bother looking for Wenjio. They put the bowls in the recycling bin at the window and left the cafeteria. Wenjio first cleaned up the grease in the kitchen, then ran to the window and walked back into the kitchen with the recycling bin. Although Wenjio likes cooking, she actually hates washing dishes and pots. But there was no other way at the moment. What was the point of washing dishes to make money? So Wenjio resigned himself to putting the recycling bin next to the sink and started washing the dishes one by one. Xiao Shishir, who had just returned from the toilet, saw Wenjio washing dishes with great grunt. She was a little confused. Isn't there a dishwasher robot here? Wenjio shook his head and said, No, I have to wait until the business volume increases before I can apply to a school. This made Xiao Shishir speechless. Can I buy one myself? It should be possible, but I have no money. Wenjio didn't think there was anything wrong with saying that he was poor. But Xiao Shishir was stunned when she heard this. She had learned about this before coming to 3047 Academy. Although anyone who is a citizen of Planet 3047 can attend school for free, the school's part-time job quota actually belongs to those children who have some power. To put it bluntly, it means using various robots to replace people to do things, and then you just sit back and collect money. She really didn't expect Wenjio to be poor. Xiao Shishir secretly looked at Wenjio. Seeing that she looked pale, thin, and malnourished, Xiao Shishir felt very complicated. But she said nothing, just picked up a handkerchief and joined in washing the dishes. The two of them finished the follow-up work quietly and then slowly walked back to the dormitory. Jujio, what classes do you have tomorrow morning? Xiao Shishir changed into a pink pajamas before lying down on the bed. Wenjio had too many classes to choose from, and for a moment he forgot a little. So she opened the wisdom ring panel and took a look before saying, use and practice of supernatural powers and physical training. Oh, then we can't go to class together tomorrow. Xiao Shishir turned over. Mine is a fighting class. I hope it won't be too tiring. Oh, by the way, Jujio, I added you as my friend on StarNet. It's still early. How about we go to StarNet and play for a while? Wenjio had never been to the Star Network world, so he agreed to Xiao Shishir's proposal. After accepting the other party's friend request, she learned to reconnect her mental power with the wisdom ring. It is detected that the user Jia Taiwan Gon 9 is entering the Star Network world. Start connecting. As the mechanical sound rang in her mind, Wenjio soon fell into darkness, but then a white light gradually spread out in front of her eyes. Connection completed. Please user Jia Taiwan Gon 9 abide by the rules of the Star Network world. I wish you a happy life. Not long after, Wenjio found himself standing in an unfamiliar place. This should be the Star Network world that Xiao Shishir mentioned. There was also a small blue panel in front of her, displaying various messages. When Geo tried to slide and turn off the panel, then began to observe the surrounding environment, she found that this place was more splendid and dazzling than the city outside. Apart from the tall buildings that still looked familiar, the rest were new and strange things she had never seen before. Mechas of various shapes soared in the sky, and from time to time hovercrafts passed through them, scurrying around like dormant venomous snakes in the steel jungle. However, many mechas flashed by, leaving her no time to see their appearance clearly. A holographic projection that is larger and more eye-catching than the one outside appears on the steel building, and you can see one advertisement after another just by looking up. What surprised Wenju even more was that everyone walking on the street looked different. Some had patterns all over their bodies, some had animal ears on their heads, and some even looked like half-orcs. Wenju was dazzled by all the strange costumes. It took him a while to remember that he should look for Qiao Shirshir. So Wenju sent a message to Qiao Shirshir. Family Wealth 9. Shirshir, where are you? Qiao Xiaotian. I'm at the entrance of Maobai Mall. If we both enter at the same time, our positions won't be too far apart. I'll wait for you here. After Wenju remembered the name of the mall, she called up the panel and selected automatic navigation. When she looked forward, a series of green footprints appeared on the ground, guiding her in the direction. Wenju followed the instructions and continued to observe his surroundings. He felt like Granny Lu entering the Grandview Garden, and everything he saw was new and interesting. Just as Qiao Shirshir said, they were indeed very close. Wenju only walked for more than 10 minutes before he saw Qiao Shirshir standing at the entrance of Maobai Shopping Mall. But unlike her previous appearance, Qiao Shirshir was now wearing a pink princess dress and had golden curly hair. If her face hadn't changed, Wenju would have almost failed to recognize her. But when Wenju walked quickly to Qiao Shirshir's side, she was startled. What can I do for you, sir? The first update of today has been delivered. If you like it, please click to collect and recommend it. Thank you to the little cuties who clicked to collect and recommend it. Thank you so much. Your support is my motivation. The second update will be sent at 0:30 in the evening W equals this gentleman? Wenju was confused. Which gentleman? She also turned her head and looked around. Apart from her and Qiao Shirshir, she didn't see anyone else around Qiao Shirshir. Shirshir, who are you calling? After Wenju said this, she immediately understood why Qiao Shirshir said that. Because her originally childish voice now became extremely rough, as if she was about to fight a tiger with her bare hands in the next second. You Juju? Qiao Shirshir's face was full of disbelief. How come you still have this hobby? I don't mean to offend you. Wenju was silent. She could never have imagined that when the character creation interface was stuck, the system would automatically set her to look like this. She walked to the smooth outer wall of the mall that could be used as a mirror, and suddenly felt like escaping from this world even more. Wenju's current appearance was clearly reflected on the wall. He was a burly man, with a broad back and strong waist, and looked like he could beat 10 people with one punch. He had a fierce face, skin darker than coal, and a beard. Wenju was stunned for a moment, then he subconsciously touched his beard, thinking that it was no wonder that few people dared to look at her directly when she was walking just now. At this time, Qiao Shirshir finally prepared herself mentally. She took a deep breath, walked to Wenju and said, I'll take you to the Starlight Night Market. Let's take the suspended tram first. However, she did not have the courage to hold Wenju's arm as she usually did. After all, Wenju's arm was now as long as her thighs. So Wenju followed Qiao Shirshir all the way to the station, during which time a young man came to ask Qiao Shirshir if she needed help. He acted as if he was treating Wenju as a bad guy who was threatening people. So while waiting for the bus, Wenju quickly opened the panel and searched for how to change the Star Network image. However, it can be changed, but it will cost 5,000 star coins to reset the image. Poor guy Wenju decisively gave up on making any changes and just decided to make do with it. The two of them rode in the suspended electric rail car and glided on the track above. After a while, they arrived at the Starlight Night Market Station. Wenju, with his big body, walked side by side with the petite Qiao Shirshir. Whenever someone passed by, they couldn't help but look back at them. But Wenju still walked calmly, and Qiao Shirshir did not say anything because of the strange looks from others. Instead, she held Wenjio's finger and continued walking with him. Those who looked back immediately realized that the two were father and daughter. Wenjio and Xiao Shishir had no idea what others were thinking. They walked down the stairs, turned around, and stepped into the gate of the Starlight Night Market. Unlike the bustling city we were in just now, this place is full of noise and bustle, with people coming and going like a tide. There are enthusiastic stall owners and hawkers everywhere, and noisy hawking sounds can be heard one after another. There are stalls selling strange-shaped weapons, potions for treating various injuries, and freshly made food. Stalls of all sizes are arranged in an orderly manner, giving off a lively feel. It gave Wenju a feeling of returning to his old world. Take a look and see what you like. The items here will be automatically deposited into your StarNet account after purchase, and you can withdraw them when we return to reality. Xiao Shishir took Wenjio as they walked and looked around. Many vendors wanted to say a few words to them, but when they saw Wenjio's burly appearance, they retreated one after another. Generally speaking, the Star Network image is set based on one's own appearance, so when these people saw Wenjio's ferocious face, they felt a little scared. However, none of this affected the two girls shopping. Xiao Shishir even felt that it was great to have Wenju around, as she didn't have to worry about being sold things by strange people. In addition to these street vendors, there are also many shops selling items, and the things inside are obviously much better than those on the street stalls. Hey Juju, look at this. Xiao Shishir picked up a huge bow from a table outside a jewelry store. What do you think of me wearing this? As she spoke, Xiao Shishir began to put a bow on her head. I have to say that Xiao Shishir is really suitable for these girly things. Wenjio accompanied Xiao Shishir into the store for another round of shopping. In the end, Xiao Shishir returned with a lot of things. She even bought a few black and white folders for Wenjio. The two of them strolled around for a while, during which time Xiao Shishir bought 2 roasted sweet potatoes. But not only were the outsides roasted black, but the insides were also like charcoal. In the past, she thought it was barely edible, but after eating the food made by Wenjio, Xiao Shishir felt disgusted with the roasted sweet potato. Wenjio was wandering around, wondering if she could set up a stall here. She knew what the people here didn't know, so she could expect to make a lot of money in no time. So Wenjio opened the panel and searched for relevant information on it. What she couldn't understand was why it cost 5,000 star coins to change the image on the Star Network, but only 2,005 star coins to set up a stall here. However, even if it was 2,005 star coins, Wenjio couldn't afford it now. She only had about 300 star coins on her, and she had to thank 3047 Academy for depositing a sum of money for meals into each student's Star Network account, but the money could not be withdrawn or used elsewhere. So Wenjio could only suppress the idea of setting up a street stall and wait until he had saved enough money before doing so. Xiao Shishir looked at the time. It was almost midnight. The time in the Star Network world flowed at the same speed as in reality, so the two of them quickly left and went to sleep, fearing that they would miss the next day's class. The next morning, Wenjio stood on the balcony of the dormitory and began to practice. Although she couldn't use the skills she had learned here, she could still practice them diligently to improve her physical fitness. So Wenjio concentrated his energy into his dantian and performed a set of Tai Chi in one breath. Xiao Shishir's class started a little later than hers, so she was still sleeping when Wenjio left. Wenjio went to the classroom shown on the schedule alone. When she arrived at the classroom, there were already a few classmates sitting inside. However, since she was not familiar with the other students, Wenjio did not go up to say heko and found a seat closer to the podium and sat down. With 5 minutes left before class started, the classroom was already full of people. Each table here is occupied by one person, so there is no such thing as sitting at the same table. No one came to chat with Wenjio, so Wenjio simply lay on the table and opened the Star Network panel to continue studying how to become a billionaire. After a while, a plump female teacher walked in from the door. She walked up to the podium wearing glasses and said with a pleasant face, "Heko, students, I am Teacher Lee, who is teaching the course on the use and practice of supernatural powers." Heko, Teacher Lee. Wenjio stood up with everyone else, greeted Li Qingjin, and then sat down again. Sit down. Today I will first tell you about the knowledge related to superpowers. After everyone has enough knowledge, we will go to the training ground for actual combat exercises. Li Qingjin then turned on the holographic projection and began to introduce the origin of superpowers to them. Everyone, open the Wisdom Ring panel and select the recording interface. Li Qingjin continued after stepping down from the stage. I believe that many of you here already know something about superpowers before entering school. Those who don't know can watch the video first. The second update of today has been delivered. Thank you all for your recommendations and collections. If you like it, please click on the collection and recommendation votes. Like 030. P.S. This article contains food elements, and the chapters with food will be named after the food. When Gio stared at the constantly changing images intently. This video introduced the origin and branches of superpowers in detail. Currently, the superpowers developed by the Federation can be divided into 8 major categories: gold, wood, water, fire, earth, light, dark, and ice. These superpowers can not only be used by humans alone, but also assist in cooperating with mechas in combat. However, due to the limited learning resources of the 3047 Academy, only after reaching the senior grades can one learn to use superpowers in conjunction with mecha combat. Everyone already has a basic understanding of superpowers, so next we will continue to understand the characteristics of each superpower. The scene changed, and people with various superpowers appeared in the image and began to demonstrate. Some of them had flames on their fingertips, some of them had long vines appearing when they flicked their hands. Until then, a person with gold superpowers came on stage. He snapped his fingers and several small metal pieces quickly spun and flew in the air, creating a shape similar to a gust of wind. When Jiu then realized that this was the Skillshare gang used to attack her yesterday. According to the current statistics of the Federation, the number of people who possess the 3 types of superpowers light, darkness, and ice is the smallest. Li Qingjin taught the class diligently. Of course, the number of people who possess dual superpowers is also very rare. Teacher, is there anyone who possesses 3 or 4 types of superpowers? A male student sitting in the front row asked with a focused look. Li Qingjin smiled and said, in the history of the Federation, there have been 2 seniors who possessed 3 types of supernatural powers, but there has never been anyone who possessed 4 types of supernatural powers. With the video playing and Teacher Li's explanation, the first half of the class passed quickly. When Jiu also had a clearer understanding of superpowers. It was similar to the spiritual roots she had awakened through cultivation before, and she could use the elemental power contained in it to use skills to attack, defend, etc. In addition to the moves taught by the system, people with high talent could also create their own. After everyone had a 10-minute break, Li Qingjin started teaching again. The video footage has been played. Everyone can try to activate their own special abilities. Li Qingjin said as she began to demonstrate. She stretched out her hand and said, everyone, stretch out your hands first, then close your eyes and feel the energy contained in your body. When Jiu followed her and stretched out his hand with his eyes closed. Before Li Qingjin finished her words, when Jiu felt the familiar heat flow in his body. In just a moment, an orange-red flame appeared on one Jiu's fingertips, and the sudden increase in temperature surprised Li Qingjin. There are many people with fire abilities, but this is the first time she has met someone who can ignite such a passionate fire for the first time. But Li Qingjin quickly regained her composure and just thought that when Jiu was someone who had learned to use supernatural powers outside in the past. The other students were still trying to feel and mobilize their own energy, and Li Qingjin was waiting for them with her hands folded. She didn't notice that the flame ignited by Wen Jiu suddenly turned a shade of blue. Wen Jiu naturally kept staring at the flame on her fingertips. The blue color was clearly the deep-sea blue flame that she had subdued before. The deep-sea blue flame was her natal fire that she had searched for a long time, and the process of taming it was naturally extremely difficult. Wen Jiu really didn't expect that the deep-sea blue flame would follow her to this world, because when she came here, she couldn't use any martial arts and was no different from an ordinary person. But now that she has her natal fire, she can make pills and sell them for money in the future. Wen Jiu's mood instantly improved a lot, and there was a hint of joy between her brows. Not long after, the male student who asked the question earlier also successfully activated his superpowers, becoming the second person in the class to activate superpowers. His special ability is water-related, but his proficiency is too low, and water spurts out of his fingertips like a stuck water gun. Although Wen Jiu had detected dual element abilities before, she failed to activate the wood element ability when she concentrated again. It was almost time for the get out of class to end, and less than 10 students had successfully activated their superpowers. Li Qingjin said softly, "Students who didn't succeed in inspiring others this time should not be anxious. Try more when you go back. Since everyone has successfully tested their abilities before entering school, then everyone must be able to activate them. There are many people who fail to activate their supernatural powers the first time. Like me, Teacher Li, I also tried many times before I succeeded." After the get out of class, Wenju left the classroom and walked towards the training ground again. The next class was physical training. This time the teacher is an acquaintance. But Wenju did not rush to greet Zhou Sin, but just stood in the queue obediently. When everyone arrived, Zhou Sin changed from a gentle young man into a falcon with stern eyes. "Let's just do a simple training today," Zhou Sin said. "Everyone turn right. Run." After saying that, he blew a whistle and urged the students to run forward, and only let them stop after they ran 5 laps around the training ground. But everyone was still not used to it, and couldn't help but gasp for breath when they stopped. Wenju also felt a little tired, but she was used to running around when picking up trash, so a few laps around the training ground were not difficult for her. "Everyone, stand still," Zhou Sun suddenly scolded. "You are reserve soldiers after entering the academy. You have to be on par with the official federal soldiers." After he finished speaking, everyone who was originally catching their breath resumed their upright standing posture, and the line became neat again. Zhou Sun nodded with satisfaction. "Next, we will start the formal training." He looked at a wire barrier not far ahead and continued. "Start from this side, crawl forward through the wire, then grab the bar in the air, and finally crawl back from the wire fence over there." After hearing his words, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. Wenju didn't think there was anything strange about it. She felt that if one wanted to become a regular soldier, this amount of training was nothing. The training will officially begin next. Everyone repeat 3 times, and then come back to gather. After saying that, Zhou Sin blew the whistle. Everyone rushed towards the first barbed wire fence. Wenju maintained a steady pace. When she ran to the barbed wire, half of the people had already set off, while the remaining half stood there in a daze. Without stopping for long, she crawled onto the ground and into the mud pit under the barbed wire without hesitation. Looking at the mud and water splashed by Wenju as she walked forward, the 2 boys running behind her immediately frowned. "Do we really want to train here in such dirty, muddy water? Should we continue?" There were many people who were just as disgusted as them. Zhou Sun saw them standing there and came over and said, "What are you all standing for? Will there be any environment for you to choose when you go to the battlefield? If you don't continue training, I'll double your repetitions." After hearing this, those who were standing there in a daze gritted their teeth, and one after another lay down on the ground and moved towards the mud pit. Wenju was like a nimble loach, moving forward with his hands thrust forward without fear of getting dirty. Soon she finished crawling through the mud pit under the barbed wire and completed the task. Although her body was covered in mud, she still ran towards the next destination without blinking. Today's first update has been delivered. Thank you for your recommendation votes and monthly votes. QAQ. New little cuties. Please click to collect and recommend. The second task is to grab the pole in the air. It sounds simple, but in fact most of the students who completed the first task stopped here. Because under the grabbing rod is an unfathomable pool of water, with countless first-level alien beasts, sharp-toothed fish, swimming in it. Most of the students stood there thinking about this, and only a few tried to take action. A student with wood-related abilities tried hard, and summoned a bunch of vines that began to spread into the air. But just as the vine was about to touch the pole, the sharp-toothed fish suddenly flew up and bit it to pieces in an instant. The others shook their heads as they watched him operate. They had also tried various supernatural powers, but to no avail. Wenju also saw the classmates' behavior, and she silently thought about how to solve the problem. But just thinking about it is useless. You still have to try more. So Wenju walked forward and tried to grab the first pole ring. However, the toothy fish did not move at all. Wenju was about to move forward tentatively when he suddenly heard a sneer. "Of course there will be no reaction if you touch me now. I will start attacking you once you are in the air." She looked in the direction of the voice and saw a handsome young man holding his head high with a rather arrogant attitude. Really? Thank you for your reminder. Wenjio was not angry. Instead, he looked at him with a smile. Although this person's attitude was not very good, he did not mean any harm. Hearing her answer, the young man felt inexplicably uncomfortable and turned his head away and no longer looked at Wenjio. Seeing that the man stopped talking, Wenjio began to try to move in the air. The others were watching her from below as she slowly climbed up. After Wenjio crawled about 2 meters, the sharp-toothed fish suddenly began to attack her. The sharp-toothed fish bared its teeth and leaped up, wishing it could drag her into the pool and tear her to pieces. Wenjio was caught off guard and bitten by a sharp-toothed fish. Although it was only bitten on her right calf, blood still seeped out through the torn seams of her school uniform. The students watching her from below were a little worried and shouted quickly, "You jump down first. Be careful. Let's come down first and think of a new solution." Even the young man who had sneered before felt a little bit reluctant and lowered his head, not daring to look anymore. But Wenjio ignored her and gritted her teeth to endure the pain. While the sharp-toothed fish were falling into the pool, she raised her head and looked towards the finish line ahead. There was still more than half the distance to go, and she stared at the sharp-toothed fish swimming below, thinking quickly about how she could get across successfully. So many students have tried it before, and their superpowers cannot be used, so they can only use ordinary methods. The further you go, the more sharp-toothed fish there are, and you will get hurt if you are not careful. Soon, Wenjio made a decision. She continued to move forward. Even though she failed to dodge and was bitten again, she still moved forward with gritted teeth. The students who had originally planned to wait for others to find a solution were now motivated. One by one, they began to try. When Wenjio successfully flipped over a pool and landed on the ground, he was already covered in bruises. But she had been dodging very seriously, so these minor injuries did not affect her training. She just ran to the next pool. After she successfully passed through 3 pools and completed the task of grabbing the pole in the air, a strange picture suddenly flashed through her mind. It just disappeared so quickly that she had no time to react. She thought maybe she was too tired and had hallucinations, so she didn't pay much attention to it. Since many people were still doing the aerial rings at that moment, Wenjio was the first to reach the last task. In fact, this task is very similar to the first task, both of which require crawling forward. The mud pit turned into a sand pit. Wenjio crawled under the barbed wire without hesitation and slowly moved forward in the sand pit. After this time, she would have to repeat it 2 more times to complete it, so she didn't want to waste too much energy at this moment. After she completed the last task, Wenjio ran back to the original task location. After doing this 3 times, she had completely turned into a clay figure fished out of a mud pit. There were still various grains of sand on her body, and the blood stains on her school uniform were no longer visible. Wenjio sat at the assembly point waiting for the others to return. She raised her hand and looked at it boredly. Inexplicably, she thought of the time when she was naughty and her master got angry and scolded her as a mud monkey from the mountain. Now he has really become a mud monkey. Yes. Josen handed a bottle of nutrient solution to Wenjio, who thanked him and took it and poured it into his mouth. All the fatigue in my body was relieved instantly. You have completed the training and can go. Josen looked at the little Wenjio. He didn't expect that this student would be the first to complete the task in this training. Looking at Wenjio's thin and small appearance, he thought that he would be ranked last. He even thought about how he would save Wenjio if he failed to complete the task. Unexpectedly, you can't judge a book by its cover. When Wenjio heard this, he didn't act pretentiously. He responded and quickly ran towards the dormitory. She was covered in mud and was feeling very uncomfortable. She had to go back and wash herself clean. Qiao Shishir was tidying up in the dormitory when she suddenly looked up and saw a clay man crawling in. But it scared her. Go take a shower quickly, Jujio. After recognizing the person, Qiao Shishir breathed a sigh of relief. She was so scared that she thought a wild man appeared out of nowhere. Fortunately, it's just Wenjio, not a savage. Hearing this, Wenjio nodded. After getting her change of clothes, she went into the shower and rinsed herself thoroughly before coming out. As soon as I walked out, I heard Xiao Shirshi's slightly surprised voice. Hey, why is your hair shorter? Xiao Shirshir couldn't help but look at Wenjio with some confusion, only to see that his long platinum hair, which originally reached his waist, now only reached his collarbone. The second update has been delivered. Please vote for the new cuties. I wish every cutie a happy weekend. 030, tomorrow is 2 chapters of food. It's a bit troublesome to take care of, so I just cut it off. Wenjiu picked up a towel and wiped it roughly. When he saw that his hair was no longer dripping with water, he found ointment from the medical kit provided by the academy and applied it to all the scratched areas. The main reason is that a lot of mud has accumulated on my hair when I took a shower just now. Wenjiu thought that there would be many more such trainings in the future, and she had to rush to work in the cafeteria. If she spent too much time taking care of herself every day, she was afraid that she would not have enough time. I just cut my hair short. I'll go to the cafeteria first. Wenjiu changed his clothes and tied his hair neatly into a small bun. I'm with you. Xiao Shirshir only has one class in the morning and happens to have nothing to do at the moment. So the two of them went to the cafeteria together. Wenjiu first checked the remaining ingredients and suddenly found a large basket on the shelf. She took down the large basket, which was half filled with fresh meat and half filled with vegetables. Xiao Shirshir came over curiously, pointed at the vegetables in the basket and asked, Hey, what kind of vegetables are these? Wenjiu took out a portion and looked at it carefully. This is shepherd's purse. In the past, in the spring, she often went to the mountains under the pretext of picking herbs to pick all kinds of wild vegetables and bring them back for cooking. For example, shepherd's purse is easy to identify. The root leaves are clustered, deeply pinnate, rarely entire, and the upper lobes are triangular. The stem leaves are oblong or linear lanceolate, almost linear at the top, ear-shaped at the base, with notched or serrated edges, or nearly entire. 1. Wenjiu looked at the large piece of fresh meat again. The meat looked red and white, and it was very similar to the meat she had picked up before. It should be the meat of the Gulu beast. When she was eating it, she felt that the meat of the Gulu beast was very similar to the pork she had eaten before, so Wenjiu had an idea in her mind. You can continue to cook the silkworm potatoes, but the plain noodles can be replaced with shepherd's purse dumplings. When Jiuxian and Xiao Shirshir washed all the vegetables they were going to use, and then Xiao Shirshir peeled the potatoes while Wenjiu cleaned the Gulu beast meat and chopped it up on the chopping board. Then Wenjiu mixed the flour and water in a certain proportion and began to knead the dough vigorously until it became medium to hard before putting it into a bowl to let it sit. Then she quickly picked off the yellow leaves of the shepherd's purse and blanched it in boiling water for a while to remove the bitterness. Wenjiu then chopped the blanched and cooled shepherd's purse into pieces and poured it into a bowl and mixed it with the minced meat. He only added a little salt, pepper, sesame oil, and oyster sauce for seasoning. Then Wenjiu brought over the potatoes peeled by Xiao Shirshir and cut them into small pieces for later use. After completing these tasks, the dough is fermented. Wenjiu's 5 fingers flew, and the dumplings he made were all as cute and small as ingots. Seeing this, Xiao Shirshir couldn't help but ask, Jujiu, what is this you made? Shepherd's purse dumplings. Seeing Xiao Shirshir eager to try, Wenjiu said, You can help me if you want. Hearing this, Xiao Shirshir happily picked up a piece of dumpling wrapper and started making dumplings like Wenjiu. But she made several, and they were all extremely ugly. They were not even close to the shape of Wenjiu's. Xiao Shirshir had proven her own skills and decisively gave up wrapping the dumplings. She moved a stool and sat nearby, waiting to try the new dumplings. Wenjiu is always serious and focused when doing things. As the saying goes, the more serious a person is, the better looking he is. At this moment, she was as dazzling as a bright pearl. Xiao Shirshir thought secretly that it was a pity that she was the only one who could see Wenjiu's elegance in the kitchen. It would be great if more people could see Wenjiu, then more and more people would come to eat there. Wenjiu quickly finished wrapping all the dumplings. She put enough for 2 people into the pot and simmered them. Then I started making chili oil. Finally, when the dumplings were cooked until they were bright white and floated, Wenjiu took them out and put them on a plate. Xiao Shirshir picked up a dumpling carefully. As soon as she took a bite, the hot soup inside the dumplings splashed out, full of sweetness. The chewy dough, coupled with the fragrant shepherd's purse, made her exclaim in delight. The salty taste of the meat filling also made the whole dumpling more layered. Xiao Shishir ate shepherd's purse dumplings one after another, thanking Wenjiu for being her roommate. She really couldn't find anyone else who could make such delicious food. She often went to high-end restaurants with her parents to eat, but when it came down to it, all the food in those high-end restaurants was not as good as Wenjiu's bowl of dumplings. It's so great to be able to eat such delicious food. Xiao Shishir now looks at Wenjiu with eyes full of admiration. Jujiu, you are so amazing. I think I can help you here without salary, as long as I have delicious food every day. Wenjiu agreed with a smile, but she thought to herself that she would still have to pay Xiao Shishir a salary when she had money. The two of them quickly finished their dumplings. Xiao Shishir took the dishes and ran to wash them. Wenjiu then entered today's menu into the electronic screen outside. When it was time for lunch in the cafeteria, many people were walking slowly towards the cafeteria. But a group of people suddenly appeared from somewhere, running and shouting, "Brother Dalong, run faster. What if you're late and it's gone? I just got off the training ground. What are you yelling for? Run. Hurry up, Dalong brother. If you don't eat today, you won't be able to eat it." Many people were intrigued by their loud shouting, and a small number of people followed them and ran towards the cafeteria. More and more people followed, and a large group of students were seen running towards the cafeteria at a rapid speed. The leading few people rushed directly to window number 18. "Fairy, plain noodles, plain noodles. I want 3 bowls of Tiankin potato. Make it more spicy." Xiao Shishir smiled and said, "I'm sorry we don't have plain noodles today. We've got some new shepherd's purse dumplings. Would you like to try them?" The people in front were a little hesitant as they had never heard of shepherd's purse dumplings. Instead, Wang Dalong, who came from behind, shouted, "I want 2 servings of dumplings." Seeing him order, those who were still hesitating quickly followed suit and ordered shepherd's purse dumplings. Although they didn't know what this thing was, at least it wouldn't be worse than the food at other windows, right? They were all the people who had eaten the food made by Wenjiu yesterday. Since Wenjiu was only open at noon and in the evening, they could only eat food made by other people in the morning, but they felt like they were eating garbage and it was hard to swallow. So as soon as lunch was served, they all rushed to the cafeteria to place their orders. Wenjiu put the dumplings into the hot water, then methodically poured the potato strips into the bowl and mixed the ingredients. All the orders placed by these people were completed quickly. Wang Dalong and his companions sat down with their plates in anticipation, looking at the steaming dumplings that were as round and cute as ingots. Suddenly I felt hungry. "Is this the delicious potato you were talking about yesterday?" The person sitting next to Wang Dalong is his good brother Li Erpeo. After Wang Dalong ate such delicious food yesterday, he went back and sold it to others. Today, he did not forget to bring his good brother to dinner. But Li Erpeo has never had any interest in eating, because in his opinion all food tastes terrible and is better than drinking nutrient solution. But since Wang Dalong had asked, he couldn't refuse, so he followed him here. He had originally thought of just eating a couple of bites to get by, but now, looking at the distinct colors of the bright yellow potato strips and the bright red chili oil, it aroused his appetite. "This is it. It's called Tiankin potato." Wang Dalong handed him a pair of chopsticks. "Try it now." The Tiankin potatoes that Wang Dalong ordered today were specially made with extra spiciness, so the potato strips that Li Erpeo picked up were covered with a lot of red oil. He took a bite nonchalantly and was immediately hooked. Today's update has been delivered. If you like it, please give me more recommendations, cuties. Remember to collect it. Like 030. I would like to thank the little cuties who sent me recommendation tickets. There is also a little angel who sent me a monthly ticket. Thank you so much. I can only work hard to write and repay you QAQ. The spiciness burned through his throat all the way to his heart, and he was so stimulated that he stuck out his tongue. Li Erpeo took a few gulps of water before he recovered. "Darn, I forgot to put less spiciness in your dish." Wang Dalong watched Li Erpeo drinking water like crazy, and then remembered that Li Erpeo didn't seem to be able to tolerate spicy food. But Li Erpeo just waved his hand and said, "It's okay. I want this taste. The taste of this pepper is amazing." It's not that he can't eat spicy food, but he has never found any spicy food that can be considered delicious. But the spicy taste of the Tiankin potato made his whole body numb, but he could never forget it. So Li Erpeo paused for a moment and then started eating again. Wang Dalong felt relieved to see that he was fine. He picked up a dumpling and took a look at it. The crystal clear, plump, bright white dumplings are steaming. Wang Dalong blew on the dumplings and put them into his mouth. The moment he chewed them, he was overwhelmed by the special taste and his eyes widened. The first thing you taste is the sweetness of vegetables, followed by the freshness of meat, a perfect blend of salty and sweet. He just felt that the dumplings were delicious. The dumpling skin was chewy and smooth, and the fillings were full of layers. They were so delicious that he swallowed the dumplings in his mouth immediately, leaving only a mouthful of fragrance. He quickly picked up a few more and stuffed them into his mouth. Because he ate too hastily, Wang Dalong burned his lips. But he was so absorbed in the delicious food that he had no time to think about anything else. Is this delicious too? Li Erpeo had already finished a serving of Tiancan potatoes and was craving for the shepherd's purse dumplings on Wang Dalong's plate. Wang Dalong was not a stingy person. He wanted to share a few dumplings with Li Erpeo, but when he thought of the sweet taste, he could only swallow the dumplings with tears. Go and queue up to buy another one. Wang Dalong patted his good brother on the shoulder while eating. Please get one for me too. Li Erpeo was speechless. The years of brotherhood could not compare to a dumpling. But he didn't say anything, just turned and looked at window number 18. The scene there left him dumbfounded. The queue stretched from the window to the cafeteria door. It was the first time he had seen such a lively scene. In the past, when people came to the cafeteria to eat, they would be too lazy to wait in the line with the longest queue and would just queue at another window since everyone's food was equally bad anyway. But there just happened to be a window number 18, which made the students line up happily. The same goes for Li Erpeo. Anyone who has tasted the food made by Wenju will be willing to line up to buy it. Next, Xiao Shishir wiped her sweat with a handkerchief. There were more people placing orders today than last night. She was so busy that she was a little dazzled when checking the orders. But Wenju was different from her. He still made dumplings and mixed potatoes in an orderly manner without any panic. 2 servings of silkworm potatoes and 2 servings of shepherd's purse dumplings. Wenju put the prepared food into a bowl and handed it to Xiao Shishir, who quickly took it and put it on the window. The food is ready. Please be careful with the heat. Yurumin and Li Qingjin took it with a smile and found a seat. The two have been friends for many years. Today, Yurumin specially brought Li Qingjin to Wanjia's place for dinner. Li Qingjin originally thought that Yurumin wanted to take care of her students, until she tasted the shepherd's purse dumplings. She knew why Yurumin had specifically asked her to come here. It tastes good, right? Seeing that Li Qingjin had the same expression as herself yesterday, Yurumin knew that she must be impressed by the delicious food made by Wenju. It's not just good, it's delicious. Li Qingjin has always loved delicious food, but she has a lot of things to do in the college, so she can only trouble Yurumin to bring back some meals from high-end restaurants for her when she goes out. She has a gentle and introverted personality, and even when she had eaten the signature dish of a high-end restaurant before, she had never lost her composure as she did now. As if he was not afraid of the heat, he stuffed the shepherd's purse dumplings into his mouth one by one. When there were only a few left, Li Qingjin had a sudden idea to dip the shepherd's purse dumplings in the chili oil in the bowl of Tiancan potatoes. A spicy taste instantly spread throughout the tongue. It's so spicy. Li Qingjin took a breath and felt tears welling up in her eyes. The filling is spicy and sweet at the same time. Although the taste is obvious, it does not conflict with each other. Instead, it makes Li Qingjin feel refreshed all over. The sauce tasted spicy and fresh, but it didn't make her feel sick. She didn't like spicy food because she always felt choked and uncomfortable after eating it. Hiss, delicious. After the spicy taste wore off, Li Qingjin continued to eat the shepherd's purse dumplings with the dipping sauce. Seeing that Li Qingjin was enjoying the meal so much, Yurumin didn't want to be outdone and dipped one in her mouth. Her mouth was a little red from the spiciness, but the spicy stimulation brought by the chili made her feel very satisfied. Neither of them had a big appetite, but they were both very hungry because of the food. They ate until their stomachs were slightly full and then stopped. I'll go ask Wenju for a takeout box. It was rare for Yurumin to eat so much, and seeing that there were still a few shepherd's purse dumplings left on the plate, she felt that they should not be wasted. Li Qingjin nodded first, then suddenly remembered that the name Wenjiu sounded very familiar. When Yuruman came back with the packed box, Li Qingjin asked, "Is Wenjiu the student working at window number 18? Yuruman picked up some shepherd's purse dumplings and put them into the box while answering, "Yes, but she is the only one running this window." Hearing this, Li Qingjin felt even more shocked. "So you mean, she cooked all these meals?" "Yes." Yuruman sealed the box and prepared to follow Li Qingjin out of the cafeteria. "What's wrong? I see you're in a state of panic." "There was a student named Wenjiu in my class this morning," Li Qingjin recalled. "She was the first one in the class to activate her supernatural powers, so I have some impression of her." Yuruman smiled and said, "That's her. This is a good seedling I picked up." Li Qingjin remained non-committal. Wenjiu's admission information stated that he was a dual system psychic, and now he's so good at cooking. Who knows how many surprises he can create in the future. Wenjiu and Xiao Shishir still underestimated the students' and teachers' enthusiasm for food. Everyone who came to try it yesterday went back and recommended it to the people around them. The number of customers coming to buy today has increased exponentially. There are still 30 portions of Tiancan potato and 17 portions of shepherd's purse dumplings left. Students at the back, please pay attention. Xiao Shishir felt that she was more tired after being busy this afternoon than when she was in class. But when she saw her classmates' enthusiasm and anticipation, she felt that she could still hold on. Wenjiu hadn't been so busy for a long time, but she still looked calm and composed, and only her slightly trembling hands revealed that she was very tired. Fortunately, they finished today's lunch business not long after. The two insisted on washing the dishes before dragging their tired bodies back to the dormitory. "I think we need a dishwasher. Today's second update has been delivered. Please sign for it. My dears. First of all, thank you all for voting for me. I'll give you a big heart. 030. At the same time, I hope the new little cuties can click on the collection and recommendation. I really want your votes. QAQ. Every little cutie's support is my motivation to write. I will write well and work hard to update. I'm really happy that there has been a wave of collections in the past few days. QWQ. Xiao Shishir was lying on the bed. Her voice was so weak due to exhaustion. "I think so, too." Wenjiu agreed with this. She didn't expect that students and teachers would be so enthusiastic. Her original plan was to do it step by step, and then hire someone to wash the dishes and clean up when she was too busy. Unexpectedly, on the second day of opening, she felt like she was going to fail. In the past, she only cooked for herself, but now she has to cook for hundreds of people and wash the dishes herself. It's really too much for her to handle all of this. Thinking of this, Wenjiu opened his wisdom ring and sent a message to Zhou Sr., Jia Caiwan Gan 9. "Mr. Zhou, if I want to apply for someone to help at the window, which teacher should I look for?" It was lunchtime, and Zhou Sun replied to her quickly. 3047 Zhou Sin. Looking for Teacher Li. The next second, Zhou Sun pushed Li Qingjin's contact information to Wenjiu. Li Qingjin was preparing to take a nap when she suddenly saw her wisdom ring flashing. She clicked it and found that someone had sent her a friend request. It was this name that made her feel a little elusive. 3047 Li Qingjin. "Heko, what can I do for you?" Wenjiu typed quickly on the panel. "Jia Caiwan Guan 9, Heko, Mr. Li. I am Wenjiu, the student in charge of window number 18 in the cafeteria." Only then did Li Qingjin realize that this strange account actually belonged to Wenjiu. She couldn't understand why she chose such a nickname. 3047 Li Qingjin. "Heko Wenjiu, what can I do for you?" Wenjiu pondered for a while and briefly told the other party his thoughts. 3047 Li Qingjin. "Okay, I will help you apply. I will let you know when there is news. Good afternoon." Li Qingjin had a good impression of Wenjiu. On the one hand, Wenjiu performed very well in class, and on the other hand, the meals Wenjiu cooked impressed her. She naturally hoped that window number 18, which Wenjiu was in charge of, could hire more people to help so that Wenjiu would have more energy to cook more delicious food. After solving the problem of recruiting people, Wenjiu lay down on the bed and began to take a nap. It was not until Jijia's class reminder sounded that she hurriedly got up and ran out. Xiao Shishir didn't have classes in the afternoon, so after seeing Wenjiu leave, she turned over and continued to rest. Wenjiu ran all the way to the classroom. Fortunately, there were still a few minutes before the bell rang. so she quickly found an empty seat and sat down. This class is mecha driving, and she is looking forward to it. After a while, a burly and stern-looking male teacher walked in. "My last name is Zhang. You can just call me Teacher Zhang." Zhang Helling glanced around the classroom. "Is everyone here?" He had a cold face and a long scar under his eye. Just standing on the podium was enough to make these students feel in awe. Everyone was silent and didn't dare to speak. Everyone sat upright and obediently. "When you are all here, watch a teaching video first." The teaching method was similar to Li Qingjin's in the morning, both using holographic projection to let freshmen understand the theoretical knowledge first. Wen Jiao also sat obediently, watching the image intently. However, freshmen cannot directly come into contact with real mechas and can only learn from simulated mecha driving first, so this video mainly explains how to drive in a simulated mecha cabin. After the video was finished, Zhang Helling said expressionlessly, 5-minute break. After the break, line up in the corridor. After that, few people dared to rest. Everyone hurried to the corridor and stood in line. Wen Jiao also followed the crowd and stood in line. After Zhang Helling counted the number of people in his mind, he led them towards the simulated mecha cockpit. This is the simulated mecha cockpit. You are not allowed to move around before I tell you to start practicing. Zhang Helling raised his chin. Now each of you find a simulated cockpit and sit down. Wen Jiao looked around and saw oval, egg-shaped cockpits arranged in an orderly manner in the huge classroom. She walked to an empty mecha cabin and was just thinking about how to open the door when the red on the silver door suddenly flashed. "Scan successful. Open the hatch." After the sound disappeared, the silver hatch was seen rising slowly, revealing a cockpit that was large enough for one person. Wen Jiao carefully stepped into the leather driving seat and fastened his seatbelts while recalling the contents of the previous video explanation. After she was seated firmly, the cabin door slowly fell and closed. Wen Jiao was not a naughty child. She did not mess around with the operating console, but only carefully identified the various buttons on it. Although the operating panel of the simulated cockpit has labels on what each button is used for, the video explanation says that driving is mainly a test of each person's mental strength, because real mecha driving mainly relies on human mental power. Dear students, we will now officially begin learning how to drive mechas. Zhang Helling's voice rang out in every cockpit, and everyone listened to his instructions obediently. First, press the green button on the left armrest of the driver's seat and put on the headset. Wen Jiao followed Zhang Helling's instructions and pressed the button. Sure enough, he saw the front end of the left armrest of the driver's seat move out, revealing a small earphone. It's a bit like modern wireless Bluetooth headphones. She picked up the earphones and put them on. The seemingly ordinary earphones stuck to her ears like plasticine the moment they were inserted into her ears and would not fall out no matter how she shook her head. At this time, Wen Jiao heard Zhang Helling say again, "This headset is made of special materials. No matter what happens, it will not fall off accidentally. When piloting a normal mecha, everyone needs to wear this to follow the commander's orders. To remove it, just press the small at the end of the earphone and it will fall off automatically. Next, please press the blue button on the console and enter your student ID number on the light curtain panel." Wen Jiao listened to the instructions and operated step by step. When she finished entering her student number, the buttons on the console began to flash with a strange light, and the lights in the cabin were completely turned off. A huge, transparent display screen appeared in front of her eyes, with various information and values constantly jumping on it. "Okay, hold the control handle with your right hand and start training." As soon as Wen Jiao grasped the control handle, she felt a strange force pulling her thoughts. "Noah is at your service and will start simulated driving training soon." Soon, Wen Jiao felt that his mental power seemed to have merged with the mecha system. The window outside, which had been pitch black, now lit up. Instead of the familiar classroom scene, she saw an empty sandy area. "The simulated driving training has begun. Please concentrate on your mental strength, student 1318. The simulated battle is about to begin." Wen Jiao tensed her body and tried to move 2 steps. The scene in front of her really changed as she moved. Before she could get familiar with the operation, she saw a huge interstellar beast appear in front of her. First-level interstellar alien beast Finian. Skill is fireball attack. Weakness is at the tail. "I'm a bit stuck. This is my first time describing mecha driving QAQ. Thank you all for your recommendations and favorites. If you like it, please click to favorite and recommend. Like. 031 Ju looked at the huge interstellar monster. There were many cracks on the carbon black body, and red liquid like boiling magma was flowing inside. Its 4 sharp claws were crawling on the ground, and its slender tail was raised high. The appearance looked quite similar to the lizard she knew, except that this lizard was magnified countless times. Please prepare for battle, Student 1318. The system's cold and silent voice sounded, and when Jiu controlled the mecha to move a few steps towards Finyin. As soon as she selected a pistol, she saw Finyin spit out a stream of hot flames at her. When Jiu rolled over and dodged the flames. Even though I know I'm only in a driving simulation, the feeling of being connected to the mecha is very realistic. Even the attacks of the interstellar beasts were extremely real. When the flames approached Wenjiu, she could even feel the suffocating heat. Wenjiu quickly fired 2 shots at Finyin. Although she was not familiar with the use of the gun, fortunately the simulated mecha system came with its own aiming setting, and she hit all the targets with a few shots. However, the outer shell of the Finyin beast is hard, and except for the soft tail, which is a weak point, the rest of the shell is invulnerable to swords and guns. Seeing the burning flame coming again, a huge fireball was spit out from its fang-filled mouth. When Jiu stepped back a distance and barely dodged it, then changed to a compound bow. She had never learned to use a gun before, but she had practiced bow and arrow shooting a lot. But at that time, she only went up the mountain to hunt pheasants and rabbits. She didn't find a traditional bow in the weapon interface, but looking at the shape of the compound bow, it seemed that it should be similar in use. So she shot an arrow confidently, but the aiming range of this bow and arrow was beyond the control of the system. So it was no surprise that when Jia's first arrow missed the target. But she was not discouraged. She quickly distanced herself from Finyin and shot an arrow at its tail again. When Jiu has always been smart and quick-witted, especially in terms of studying. After shooting a few arrows, she quickly got the hang of it. After dodging the fireball attack again, when Jiu took advantage of the moment when Finyin was accumulating power to spit fire and steadily shot a crossbow arrow towards its raised tail. This time, the crossbow arrow accurately hit Finyin's tail. Finyin, who was still accumulating strength to attack, fell to the ground instantly, and when Jiu breathed a sigh of relief. Congratulations to student number 1318 for completing the simulated battle. As the system prompt sounded, the scene in front of me gradually disappeared and turned into darkness again. The simulated mecha driving has ended, and the hatch will be opened soon. Goodbye. As soon as the system voice fell, the lights in the cabin lit up instantly, and the button that was originally flashing dimmed, and the tightly closed cabin door slowly opened. Well done. As soon as Wenju left the cockpit, she saw Zhang Heling standing outside and looking at her. That's true. Wenju was very confident in her abilities. After all, she was once an excellent cultivator and had experienced many hardships. Hearing her answer, Zhang Heling was stunned. It was the first time he heard such words. But it's normal. It's normal for kids who have just entered college to be a little fearless. Go over there and rest. Zhang Heling pointed to the seat behind him. When Jiu sat down and closed her eyes to conserve her energy. Driving a mecha really consumes a lot of mental energy. Even if it was just a simulated driving, it made her feel a little tired. At this time, she was the only one who had completed the training first, while the other students were still fighting hard with the simulated interstellar beasts in the cockpit. After about 10 minutes, Zhang Heling came over with another male student. When Jiu looked up and felt that the man looked familiar. Why is it you? Before Wen Jiu could recall carefully, the person in front of him spoke first. Shi Qingyu has always been confident in his abilities. Thanks to his family connections, he has been exposed to mecha driving and the use of superpowers before entering school. But today, he lost to Wen Jiu in the morning physical training and became the second person to complete the training. This matter had already been bothering him, and now when the mecha driver met Wen Jiu again, he actually finished later than the other party. Wen Jiu raised his eyes to look at him. Then he remembered that it was the arrogant kid he had just met that morning. However, this man now had a sullen face, and they were not very familiar with each other, so Wen Jiu did not treat him warmly. Snort. Shi Qingyu snorted coldly, crossed his arms, and sat as far away from Wenjio as possible. He didn't want to see this little girl who made him lose face at all. She must have studied secretly. Otherwise, how could she beat me? Shi Qingyu thought to herself, and secretly glanced at Wenjiu, who continued to rest with his eyes closed. When the get-out of class was about to end, others came out of the simulated cockpit one after another. Unlike Wenjiu and Shi Qingyu, who showed no signs of fatigue, the words "extremely tired" were written on each of their faces. If they hadn't taken into consideration that Zhang Heling was still staring at them, they would have fallen asleep on their chairs in the next second. The most challenging aspect of mecha driving is mental strength. Several students failed the training due to insufficient mental strength. Zhang Heling put his hands behind his back and looked fierce. The academy has a place to strengthen mental strength training. You can go there to practice. Today's training ends here. Everyone go back and have a good rest. After that, everyone left the classroom. Wenjio's mental strength had not yet fully recovered, so he walked slowly towards the cafeteria. As soon as she walked out of the teaching building, she heard the sound of running behind her. Hey, are you going to train your mental strength? Shi Qingyu's elder brother graduated from the 3047 Academy and told him a lot about things in the academy before he came to school. Therefore, Shi Qingyu had already figured out the situation in the academy. He looked at Wenjiu, who seemed to be walking towards the mental training room, and immediately became alert. I never thought that such a little girl could be so hard-working and motivated. As a result, Wenjiu replied coldly the next second. I'm going to work in the cafeteria. Wenjiu would talk less every time she felt tired. She was already mentally exhausted at this moment, and she had to deal with this arrogant kid who appeared out of nowhere, which made her feel very unhappy. So she quickened her pace, not wanting to get entangled with Shi Qingyu anymore. However, Shi Qingyu didn't believe what she said and kept following Wenjiu, wanting to find out what was going on. Wenjiu ignored Shi Qingyu, who was following behind her. She just wanted to finish her work in the cafeteria quickly so that she could return to the dormitory to rest. Her mental strength is still too weak now. She becomes so tired just by operating the simulated mecha for a while. She is totally unable to meet the high standards she sets for herself. It seems that she really needs to find some time to train her mental strength. Thinking of this, Wenjiu slowly walked to the cafeteria door and went straight to window number 18. Shi Qingyu, who was following behind, began to wonder, was she really here to work? It turned out that Wenjiu really was here to work. This made Shi Qingyu stay where she was. He stared blankly at Wenjiu as she entered the kitchen. After she greeted another sweet-looking little girl, she skillfully tied an apron and put on a mask, looking like an experienced person. Today's update has been delivered. Please check it out, my dears. Thank you for your collections and recommendations. Bobobo, my dears. 030 will be updated for a few days starting from tomorrow. I also ask all my dears to collect and recommend. This is really important to me. Your support is the motivation for me to write. Please, please. QAQ children really need collections and recommendations. Are you really here to work? Shi Qingyu leaned on the window and looked at Wenjiu Dao inside. What else? Should I come here to practice? Although Wenjiu smiled gently, his words were full of sarcasm. Oh, Shi Qingyu felt that she shouldn't have overestimated Wenjiu and wasted his time. But he felt like he would be at a loss if he just left like that. So he simply sat in the cafeteria to see what was being sold at the window where Wenjiu was. Wenjiu started preparing today's ingredients. While peeling potatoes, Xiao Shishir glanced at the young boy sitting in the chair with a complaining look on his face and asked Wenjiu in a low voice, "Who is that?" "I don't know it either." Wenjiu was picking the yellow leaves from Shepherd's purse. Since Wenjiu said he didn't know him, Xiao Shishir didn't ask any more questions and turned around to concentrate on her work. Wenjiu had just finished removing the remaining yellow leaves of Shepherd's purse when he suddenly discovered another bundle of vegetables on the shelf. She remembered that the students she had received before said that the teachers distributed the ingredients to each window every week. Today is Monday. Not only are there shepherd's purse and gulu beast meat for lunch, but why are there more ingredients for dinner? So Wenjiu sent a message to Li Qingjin with confusion, but Li Qingjin was still in class and did not reply to her. Wenjiu could only suppress his emotions and picked up the bundle of vegetables to take a look at it. A faint fragrance wafted from the reddish-brown branches and leaves, allowing her to quickly identify it as another wild vegetable, tune buds. Different from the sweet taste of shepherd's purse, tune buds have a unique and special aroma. Moreover, the buds of Tuna sinensis are rich in nutrition and have therapeutic effects. They are mainly used to treat diseases such as cold, rheumatism, and stomachache. 1. Unfortunately, there are not many buds in this bundle. If I make scrambled eggs with buds of Tuna sinensis, I estimate that I can only make 7 or 8 plates at most. But it's not a big problem. It's first come, first served. When Gio hadn't tasted the taste of tune buds for a long time, she washed and chopped the buds neatly. Tuna buds always have a special fragrance, and the aroma is even more fragrant after being chopped. The method of scrambled eggs with tune buds is even simpler. Just pour the chopped tune buds into the egg liquid and mix well. Heat the pan over high heat again. Pour in the egg liquid mixed with chopped tune buds and quickly stir fry until golden. When Gio stirred the spoon steadily and used a spatula to cut the solidified egg pancake into small pieces. After shaking the iron pan several times over high heat, he poured the fried tune bud scrambled eggs into the plate. Xiao Shishir had already smelled the fragrance, and after peeling the potatoes she picked up a pair of chopsticks and came over uninvited. What is this? It smells so good. Xiao Shishir felt salivating just by smelling the scent. Tuna bud fried eggs. When Gio made the tuna bud fried eggs but didn't have time to taste them, she picked up the peeled potatoes and started cutting them into pieces. If you're hungry, eat them first. Although Xiao Shishir felt a little embarrassed, the aroma had already aroused the appetite in her stomach, so she couldn't help but pick up the golden scrambled eggs and put them into her mouth. A special aroma that she had never tasted before filled her mouth. The golden and fragrant fried eggs wrapped around the delicious vegetables, bringing a breath of spring straight to her forehead. It makes her feel like she is in a spring forest with blooming flowers and lush trees. It was not until the sound of knocking on the transparent window was heard that she was forcibly pulled out of the illusion. Hey, what are you eating? Xiao Shishir looked towards the window and saw the young boy who had followed when Gio to the cafeteria was sticking to the window, almost sticking his head in. Shi Qingyu had been struggling between the two ideas of going back to the dormitory or staying. When he finally made up his mind to go back to the dormitory, he suddenly smelled a strange fragrance coming from window number 18. The fragrance made him feel like a prey trapped in a deep jungle, and he was instantly lured into a trap. When he found the source of the fragrance, he discovered that the smell was actually coming from the mysterious food that Xiao Shishir was eating. Why don't you say anything? Shi Qingyu could smell it, but couldn't eat it, which made him inexplicably anxious. Will you sell your food? Xiao Shishir felt that the person in front of her was like a greedy kitten, who looked like he was eager to stretch out his claws to scratch her. But whether to sell or not was not something Xiao Shishir could decide. She turned around and asked Wenju. After getting his approval, she turned around and told Shi Qingyu, I'll sell it for 30 star coins. Do you want it? Shi Qingyu didn't waste any time and paid the money directly, eager to taste the food. When Gio had no intention of being mean to money. After Shi Qingyu placed the order, she naturally quickly fried another plate of scrambled eggs with Chinese tune and handed it to him. Yu Xiao Qingyu was speechless when she saw that it was Wen Julai who served the dish. But then she thought about the natural right of buying food with her own money. So she took the plate and turned around and walked towards her seat. He first looked at the dish, not knowing what it was. Although it looked strange, it smelled really good. So Shi Qingyu picked up a piece and tried to take a small bite. When you first bite into it, the scrambled eggs are crispy on the outside, but tender and smooth on the inside. The tune buds are mixed in, and the mellow aroma is stimulated during chewing. The crispy, soft, and fragrant taste made him eat bite after bite. I quickly finished the whole plate of fried eggs with tune buds, not even leaving behind the tiny pieces, but I still felt unsatisfied. One more. Shi Qingyu was already overwhelmed by the taste and quickly went to the window to buy another one. I won't sell it to you. When Jiu leaned against the window with his chin supported by one hand and looked into the eyes of Shi Qingyu. If you're still hungry, you can order something else. But Shi Qingyu didn't understand why he was not allowed to buy it a second time. When Jiu saw his confusion and said quickly, there is not much of this material left. If you buy a few more, there will be no more to sell later. but I have money. Shi Qingyu quickly replied, I can buy all of this food. Then why do you have to eat only one dish if you are so rich? Shouldn't you try more delicious food? When Jiu raised the corners of his lips, his eyes shining. Wow, it looks like this kid is a big customer. Shi Qingyu thought about it and felt that what Wen Jiu said made some sense. So what other dishes do you have? Shepherd's purse dumplings and silkworm potatoes. Wen Jiu's smile deepened. Do you want to eat? They are as delicious as the fried eggs with tune buds you ordered just now. Then let's each have one. Shi Qingyu nodded, paid the money, and waited obediently by the window. Wen Jiu quickly prepared the two dishes, but this time it was Qiao Shishir who placed them at the window for Shi Qingyu because Wen Jiu was still busy preparing the ingredients. But Shi Qingyu didn't have time to pay attention to these things. His attention was focused on the two foods he had never seen before. Although these two dishes did not have the same direct aroma as the fried eggs with tune buds, he felt hungry just by looking at the appearance. Thank you all for your support, cuties. Thank you for your recommendations and collections. Your support is my motivation. 030 like you woohoo. Recently I found that there are a few cuties who have been following the updates. I am so happy QAQ. There are 3 updates every day these days.